Assuming anybody's out there. Hello? Hello?
The stars.
There we go.
We are here. We are waiting.
Thank you for the follow.
That's trigger happy. Good to see you, my friend.
Now, hopefully the sound is working properly. I hope everybody can hear Hermit. Hello, Trigger Happy. Let me know if you don't hear him.
Hello? You should do. I might be a little bit quiet. I don't want to blow up your ears, Ange.
Oh, my ears are good.
All right.
I know.
Put that up a little bit. All right, perfect. Hi. All right.
Oh my gosh,
So, yes.
she's taking the whole jar.
Don't mind the background. That's Muffin and E watching, I think, Queen's Gambit. Tiny bit quiet on Hermit's side. There we go.
Is that better, trigger happy? A little bit better. Yeah, I've done my best to try and get rid of some of the auto gain there. There we go, trigger happy. Better.
All right. There we go. Welcome everybody to the Chillydown. With me, of course, is the Reluctant Hermit. We are doing the relaxed version, so there are all the alerts and things, as you heard the big bot go off. So, you know, the sound alerts are there. We don't care. We just want to relax, have fun, chat about all the things, drink, and generally just enjoy company with each other and, of course, with all of you lovely beings in chat. So, you know, if you have anything you want to ask us at any time, feel free. For the moment, we will start with the topic that you had, Hermit, that I think would be best to touch on, because I know it's something that has been on your mind, because you mentioned it yourself in some of your streams. And that's about dealing with the positive comments and keeping your sense of self as you get more successful, I think is what you were aiming at.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing where I was talking to a couple of the streamers that I really look up to, that I see as being kind of they're down the road in front of me, then they've experienced certain things, and I've always been of the state of mind that humility is the most important thing to maintain in any sort of endeavor that you do. I've witnessed people who have hubris around things that they do, and then they fall, and it's heart-wrenching to watch. But more than anything, it's just that I grew up never wanting to be referred to as that guy that has his head up his ass.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yep.
Like,
yep.
and it's also because of my dad, from a very young age, gave me the saying, never be afraid to be a fool. And at first I thought that meant that it was like I should just be an obnoxious clown, that I should just kind of like let rip and just be myself no matter what. And what I ended up experiencing was a lot of negative feedback from people saying, oh, you're too over the top, or you're too intense. And what ended up happening was that I had to realize that, like, not being afraid to be a fool doesn't mean that I have to be that I have permission to be obnoxious. It means that I have permission to be authentic.
Yeah.
I give myself permission to be authentic. And so instead of, you know, being kind of like, it's the difference between being in stream of consciousness with what you're saying and being intentional with what you're saying.
Yeah.
So that's sort of been the thing growing up that's always been on my mind. But I've also, because of all of the negative feedback and bullying and which I'm happy to talk about, that's been a really good growth pattern to deal with, is that any time that I have positive feedback, my mind goes into, I don't want to disappoint anyone. And so I create internalized pressure in order to feel like I have to do something. And with music, you practice, right? With music, you practice. And with Like I was a massage therapist and an audio engineer before the pandemic, and so as a massage therapist, you'd go learn a technique, you would have a peer review your work, and then you would get better that way. It was very direct feedback. You would develop your practice over time, and it was very linear. And then with audio engineering, it's pretty much if the crowd was moving their heads and stoked, and no one came up to you and said, "Could you turn the bass up?" It's the number one thing that everyone asks. By the way, friends, when you're drunk. That's all you can hear. So those are very linear things. With streaming and content creation, it's very non-linear, and so I think that the challenge that we fall into as people that create content and relate to people is the fear of, am I doing things quote unquote right? And the answer is, what is right? And
Yeah, exactly.
There's no answer. And that's been like that's been an interesting adjustment to come to, because I've always been someone that likes working towards something and seeing myself improve at it. And at a certain point, I think that you can run into a wall and feel like people are being compassionate and are paying attention. And I've also never had this before. I've had my parents encourage me to do things, but I've never had a community behind me.
Yes. And
so my biggest struggle is ensuring that I am not only being authentic to myself, but I also hope that I'm modeling good behavior and that I'm being attentive and kind to my friends.
They're here.
Yes,
Oh,
Trigger Happy,
we've got
I
a
do.
reptile raid.
And
Did it.
Hi, Sir Frog.
Hi, Sir Frog. Thank you for the raid, everybody.
It's nice to see you. It's funny that Trigger Happy did bring that up, Angelus, is that that there is a small fear of success, and I think it comes from I've met some of my heroes, and I think that what I have to remind myself also is that all humans are fallible. All humans have different moments, but every time I've met certain heroes, I have been disappointed in the interaction, and I at this point I don't know if it was how I related to them, or if they genuinely are just abrasive. And some of my heroes are musicians, particularly one of them, which I'm not going to name because it's not really pertinent to what it is. It's the feeling that comes up is when you meet a hero that you see as being successful, and they have a certain amount of ego associated with what they do. It kind of puts a bad taste in your mouth, because performers are merchants of emotion, and when you realize that they have put themselves on a pedestal, suddenly you can't relate to them as a human being, and suddenly they're far away. And to me, it's like, that's never what I've wanted with art. It's like art is directly available for you to interact with. And so when someone elevates themselves above the connection that they generate, it dissuades me from wanting to be interested in what they're doing, because it's like, well, you might be authentically performing what you're doing, but the experience where you are being connected with someone is now poisoned by the fact that I cannot meet you at eye level. You are talking down to me, and I've always disliked that sort of thing. In Buddhism, there's actually a concept called the meeting of the two minds, and it's the concept that every lama or teacher is taught when they are starting to pursue that path of teaching people, is that you never elevate yourself above your student, because you are continuously in process. And I guarantee you, anyone that you meet, you think you've learned something and that you're really good at it, they are going to challenge that, and suddenly you have to relearn that skill in the moment with them, which is very humbling, if you can humble yourself to recognize that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, sorry for the tirade, but that's what's been on my mind.
That's no problem. Like, that's the thing that I've seen in the last, it's been almost a year. Like, I've been around Twitch for 9-10 years. I think my account goes back to like Justin TV, whatever. But I only started seriously streaming since June. So mid-lockdown. Since we're going to use that as a marker of time. I've seen in this almost year, those people who have been on the verge of success. Well, however you define success. They're on the verge of going bigger. And there's this, after about a month, when they finally hit partner or hit some metric they have in their mind of what they consider success, you see a change in how they behave on stream and how they interact with their community. And this does not apply to everybody, but have been certain individuals, you just see this change, and they seem to, it's either the act that they had portrayed before they've discarded because they've reached the point they need to, or they've been feeding off so much of the positivity and love that they turn to expect it.
Yeah, that's a dangerous thing because it's something that like I frequently mention, and I do it kind of as a grounding post in general, is that I let people know that in terms of like because we've had people wanting the channel to succeed more, and I'm extremely humbled and grateful for that. But the main thing that remains the same is that I don't feel like I'm not owed anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing, is that like I've like you said, I've seen some of that happen.
Yeah.
And it's also why I have a tendency to like I've wanted to create more ways to integrate being able to hang out with people more. It's why on Wednesdays now at the end of the week that I do things. I go into my Discord and I sit in there for anywhere between 30 minutes to 2 hours, just so that like I can show people, like, look, friends, that there's no man behind the curtain.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not Oz.
Yeah.
It's the same man. And the reason being is that I've watched some people get certain amounts of success, like you said, and I've been disquieted by hearing certain things around how they got there, how they related to people, and I thought, you know, I understand how people look at streaming and that there is a business aspect to it if you want to make it a career. But I think in terms of longevity, that if you start creating anxiety and focus around that, you lose sight of what the most important thing is, and that's human connection.
Yes.
Because if I start trying to facilitate what I'm doing in order to try and engage more people inauthentically of who I am, those people who have known me the longest will certainly look at it and be like, this is different. Where's the smile? He's laughing differently. There's nervousness in his voice. And by being on stream, you could, like, this is a simple thing. You can see when a streamer is uncomfortable.
Yes.
You know, when they're upset. And it's why I've addressed it sometimes very directly whenever those things come up, and it's because I see the people that have shown up to be around me as my compatriots, as my friends, and the way that I've always operated within my friendships is through honesty, not transparency. I think we could talk about that. There is a difference between honesty and transparency.
Absolutely.
And the confusion that lies therein is a skill that you develop over time. But it's why I think it's important to address it, especially if something is starting to move forward and to succeed. And like Trigger mentioned earlier, I've had a fear of success because I've had stage fright my entire life. I've had a challenge with public speaking. The irony being is that I am not afraid to step in front of people, but the moment that I open my mouth in front of a large group of people, my mouth gets dry.
Yeah.
I get nervous. I have to practice taking deep breaths before I speak so that you're a bit more measured. And it's why I've really, really enjoyed streaming, because I imagine everyone that is talking to me as if they're right behind me or right in front of me.
Yeah.
And that's why I speak the way that I do. I've had some funny, I not think it's the word ironic, but some funny experiences where I've gone in to a voice chat somewhere and someone's started swearing and they apologized to me. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, Hermit, I'm swearing. And I was just like, dude.
Yeah.
I don't have a judgment of language unless you're belittling somebody, and then I kind of step back and go like, this isn't where I want to be. But I find it very, very funny that there's a perception as well that I do not like, quote unquote, fun or crass I don't know if crass is the right word, but free forming language.
Yeah.
I think that actually swearing is very healthy for you. Because it's an authentic expression of how you're feeling in the moment.
Yeah.
The only reason that I choose not to is because I'm trying to refine my ability to speak to people in a public format.
Yeah.
That's because I want to do music, and which means that I'm going to perform in front of people.
Yeah.
And so it's not sacrificing who I am, but it's learning to recognize the context
Yeah.
in which I'm presenting myself. And realistically speaking, as a public figure and or like performer, it behooves you to pay attention to how you're articulating yourself, not censoring yourself,
Yeah.
but to recognize that skillfully communicating can, I would say, sometimes elevate the amount of communication that you have with people. I think I'm very, very open to interpretation on that because, you have people who are artists that sing and play guitar, and then you have comedians, and I love comedians because they say the truth, and you laugh because you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me that's what I really, really enjoy. I mean, some comedians, I would say, they ride that line a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like,
Especially now, but yes.
yeah, I mean, that's actually another thing that's like interesting to look at is the development of a culture that I am more worried that we are training people to be overly worried of how they're articulating themselves and rather than learning how to respond to things.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. Like, we have this developing culture of people who are reacting to situations rather than interpreting.
Yes. Or taking the state of the time of mind to actually sit back and kind of go, I see how this could have been portrayed. Maybe I should ask some clarifying questions before I knee-jerk react to something. There are certain circumstances where I think that you can certainly call something as it is. But I would say with digital media in general, even this, right? Even with seeing my face and hearing my voice, because of anyone's experiences growing up, I could use a word that triggers a certain memory that creates a certain judgment, right?
Yeah.
The building block that I think that's missing right now in general is that we're not teaching people to constructively and critically think about things that they hear.
Yeah.
And I think that has to do with the fact that we have a lot of technology that is advancing faster than our ability to actually integrate with it healthily.
Yes. Yes, you're correct, Trigger Happy. See, the thing I've always said, especially in the last 20 years as my kids have grown up, two things that need to be taught in school and at home is the language of emotion and critical thinking. And you need to learn to pair them together. Because
we're always refining that.
Yes, absolutely. But going back to the other point, especially about swearing and things, something that myself and Samurai have joked about before on podcasts or general is people need to learn to read the room and the environment that they're in. Because there is time and place. Like, my channel is 18 plus. People can swear, make dick jokes, whatever they want, within obvious reasons. But that's specific to the environment that I have. Outside of that, there are times and places where you don't do that,
Reading a room, I think, is a skill that is not taught. And Sir Frog, I think, I love that you posing that question.
No, they don't, but they need to.
No, they need to. These are what a friend of mine referred to as soft skills. And one of the soft skills of learning to read a room is to read how people are writing things in chat to each other. Learning to figure out the rapport that certain people have developed. And It's, I mean, more recently we had a funny experience where I think that someone kind of gasped almost in a stream where one of my friends and mods said something very, very bluntly in a very, very humorous way. I told him to go to bed and he told me to F off. And I was just like,
Yep.
I died laughing. And there were a couple people like, "Are you okay, Hermit?" And I was like, yes, I have known this lovely person for almost a year. We talk frequently on the phone, and so we've developed the rapport to where that communication directly with me is all right. However, it did kind of create a blip in the chat where people were like, "Is that okay?"
Yeah.
And that's also why I like to address things directly immediately after they happen by saying, "This person has known me for a very, very long time." If someone randomly came in and told me that, I might look at it and go, "Well, I don't know the context in which you're saying that because I've never heard your voice. I don't know your temperament." And so learning to read a room is a soft skill where it's kind of like you need to take some time to watch what's happening in someone's chat or someone's voice chat, you know, or any sort of public space.
Oh, exactly. I mean, to put it in context for some people, when you go, like, say you go with a friend to a house party, you're not going to immediately walk into this new house, kick in the door, and be like, "Hello, motherfuckers, I'm here." Because that's not going to go over well. If it's your friend and all your friends who all know you, that is something that's normal for that environment. Absolutely. But new environments, you have to go in, you have to get the temperature, get a feel for the place before you open your mouth. Otherwise, you're going to cause yourself a lot of trouble, and it's the same in channels and Discords for that matter.
Oh, mate, I think one of the most challenging thing also is to, when you create something to or relate to something that you care about, is to learn how to skillfully moderate that and or gently push back where you have your boundary crossed, and instead of, like, you know, going ape on them, just like, you know, it's like there are some circumstances that I will, you know, but trying to let people know, hey, I understand that your intention was good, but your action was unskillful. And that's another thing that, like, I like to think about, that I was taught, was that a good deed and a good way of relating to people, it's not enough to have a good intention.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. If it were, we'd have a much more peaceful world. Learning to refine your action does not mean you're being inauthentic to the feeling you're expressing. You are paying attention to the relative tolerances of the space that you're in.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, most people don't think about that.
No.
At all. And I don't know why. I think it might have to do with the fact that it behooves maybe certain industries to have people to react more to impulse things.
That's part of it.
I mean, I've seen that with, like, and this is not like marketing is the science of learning to get of getting people to react to something.
Yes.
Right.
Or
And
getting
I
people
actually,
to engage. There are two sides to marketing.
which I applaud, because humans in the last 20 years have not developed the state of mind to pay attention for longer than a few moments. It's why you have things like TikTok that take off, that I think that, like, you have to grab someone's attention in the first second.
Yes.
If you don't,
They're gone.
you're just in the wind.
Yes.
It's why I don't focus so much on that platform.
Oh, neither do I. TikTok is a palace for parakeets.
Yeah. Oh my goodness! If it's all right with you, Angelus, I see.
Oh, absolutely.
That,
no, go ahead.
Listless Deity is moving. Listless, I love you, my dude. Take care of yourself. Please drive safely. And when you get to your house, just send me a message. And I'm sorry that I wasn't around today. I was outside and I was doing some errands and I was doing some gardening, and so I wasn't really present with my phone. But love you, Listless. Travel safe. Look forward to checking with you again, friends. And also, if you haven't met Listless Deity, when he comes back, he's a lovely person that does a lot of fantastic crafts.
Absolutely. Be safe, Listless. It's good to see you in. Appreciate you dropping by. as always. But yes, travel safe and look forward to hearing from you when you land. Proverbially, not literally, unless you're going to flap. And I mean, if you've got a reliable broom, it might cut down the travel time. But I'm just saying.
So earlier I went to a friend of mine's channel they were watching lacrosse, and I came in and because I know them, and no one else had said anything in chat, and I waited for a little bit, and I said, hey, this isn't Quidditch. Because he's our DM for Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And he he just laughed. He's like, good to see you too, dude. And that's what we're talking about, having the rapport with someone where that's appropriate, you know.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like you have, especially on Twitch, you have, or you will eventually, depending on where you are, you will have regulars who come into your chat that you get to know, that, you know, you'll talk to, go back and forth with, and they'll get a feel for your channel and how to interact with you. But as new people come in, and there's always going to be a cycle of new people who will pop in, look around. They may not say anything, but they'll look and see how, you know, you're interacting with your chat, how your chat's interacting with you. And if they come in and you're rage screaming at your chat, and that's, or at least that's the perception they have, chances are they're either not going to turn around, or they're not going to stay, I should say, or they're going to get really turned on. I mean, it depends on what kind of people you're looking for. But, you know, the way things go, you have to just kind of sit and soak in the environment. But on the one point I want to kind of circle back to, when it comes to Twitch, there is an element of marketing to it if you want to grow, right? And good or bad, how we present ourselves is our brand when it comes to Twitch. The difference, the thing that people lose themselves in is when they consider themselves a brand, they think that their brand has to be something that seems authentic rather than being authentically themselves. And there's a difference. And a lot of people some people, I shouldn't say a lot, people seem to lose that. So holding on to your sense of self is absolutely key. And one of the biggest things, and this actually goes back to how you handle certain situations that come up too, is who you surround yourself with, your moderators and your peer groups and streamers that you might hang out with and interact with on a regular basis. You have to have that support network offline, but also online, especially on Twitch. You have to have a support network of people who will absolutely take the piss out of you if you start going weird.
Yeah, it's actually it's a funny thing where there was one evening where Listless was hanging out with me and we were playing Valheim, and I was getting to the point where I was having a hard time articulating myself, talking about what it felt like to start. Not that I felt like I was actually losing who I was, but I was coming to that paradoxical crisis where I thought, okay, I've created internalized pressure in order to succeed at something. And what felt inauthentic to me was that suddenly I was thinking about different things. And I was telling Listless about it while we were streaming, and he told me to shut up. And his response is like, what Hermit's trying to say is that he thinks about this all day and talks about this all day, that he wants to create a space that creates authentic communication and a safe space for people, and that's what he agonizes over. And to have someone else say it, I feel weird paraphrasing it, you know, 'cause I'm referring to someone else. But it was relieving to see that someone else had, like, when you are doing your best to put yourself out there, that someone sees how you are trying, how you are doing things, and then also allowing you to kind of relax and go, it's okay to want to do things better, but don't get lost in trying to create obstacles in order, or don't perceive that there are obstacles you have to overcome when there are none. Because then what you get is someone that is doing something, and you start to see that their eyes start dashing around a little bit more. They're a bit more short in how they respond to things. Or they'll start saying, "Oh, I don't want to do that channel point redemption." It's like, well, you found something that you're not willing to compromise on. Maybe you should remove that because you're uncomfortable with it, because you made it because you thought that it would create something authentic, when in fact, actually, it's just something that you thought of, like, "Oh, this would be fun for someone to do." Yeah, but do you like doing it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's like, well, don't do it.
Yeah.
You know,
You have to know your tolerances. But my choo-choo just got derailed. Where was I going?
I'm not sure, Captain. I'm not the one with the tickets at the station.
Hi, aka Ranger Shuriken. Welcome aboard the airship. See, this is ADHD for you. I have a thought, and it's there. All right, awesome, Ranger. I have a thought, and I'm listening, trying to hold on to the thought while listening, and suddenly you say something, and the thought goes.
Oh yeah, it's gone. Oh yeah.
In a menacing voice. I don't know. How menacing do you need me to be? I am the late evening.
I'm reading what they're saying now. Oh, if I may.
Go for it.
People of Paris, listen carefully. I am Hawkmoth. Ladybug, Cat Noir, give me the ladybug earrings and the cat ring now. You've done enough damage to these innocent people.
Well done.
All right, Ranger. That was brilliant. Thank you for coming in and bringing something fun to do. That was brilliant. But you're talking about the ADHD brain. What's sweet about that, though, Angelus, is that what you're modeling is active listening.
Yes.
And so you're not listening to respond. You are listening in order to have a moment where you can kind of process what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a beautiful thing about that where it becomes an authentic communication, but also...
But at the same time...
You had a thought.
I had a thought.
It.
And it was there, and it was chugging along nicely, and then just go... But that's okay. But yes, authenticity, here's the thing. People, especially with channel point redemptions, you're absolutely right. People will go, oh, this is a good idea. They'll see something that somebody else is doing, and they might put a variation of it, thinking that it will get engagement. Not because they want to do it, but because they think it will get engagement. And that's exactly what you're saying. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, don't set yourself up for it. Right? Like, all of my sound alerts on the soundboard and most of my alerts are between 20 and 30 seconds for a reason. Because I want to celebrate those things, whether it's a follow, a host, a raid, whatever it is. It's a celebration because it means somebody wanted to do a thing. So,
exactly.
And on the sound alert board, it's a lot of, at the moment, it's a lot of 80s and 90s cartoon theme song. They're about a minute long, and I let the whole damn thing play. Because
you enjoy them.
Exactly. I enjoy them, chat enjoys them, Turtle Sex is there, and it's great. It's fun stuff that makes people laugh and gives people joy, makes me laugh, and that's the whole point, So it's not like I'm going to put a 50,000...
Stench.
Thank you, Sir Frog, for the Captain Kirk. So yeah.
It's all right, Captain.
It's one of those things. But yes. So here's the thing. Especially when it comes to success. That's what it was. Now I remember. Brain does work. Yay. And I lost it again.
You had the tendril of the thought, right?
Yeah,
so
it was there.
When it comes to succeeding at something and authenticity, I think that's what we were talking about.
Yes,
initially.
Is that as you gain success, you have to stop. You're thinking about what you can do better. Doesn't mean what you're doing at the moment is bad. That's what it was.
Yeah.
You know, you
That
want
was
to
actually-
improve things, but the problem when you think about what you need to improve, you start thinking negatively about what you've already done. But what you've already done has gotten you to the point that you're at now that you need to improve. So it doesn't mean that what you've done is bad. It just means that you are a continuous work in
Yeah.
progress. That was the thought. There it was.
Well, that's a very I'm actually that's actually kind of making me feel a sense of relief to some degree, because there were some things that I really loved doing initially that I started to see that weren't going to pan out long term in certain things. It literally came down to the movement of like what I was doing. I'm trying to articulate this without sounding haughty or rude or like I'm owed anything. But essentially,
No.
a friend of mine came in and they gave me the criticism. They said, like, you take a lot of time to pick up things that you're doing, and what ends up happening is that you have spans of like 30 seconds to a minute where we just see you shuffling around in a room. You should try and cut down on that. And it's like, well, yes, but how do I make sure that the thing that I'm doing still maintains the same level of authenticity? And what I discovered is that what had to do with saying thank you to certain things, where I would play guitar and sing.
Yeah.
I also nearly broke my instrument, and I was really just looking at the reality of the space that I'm in. I'm in a 10 by 12 space.
Yeah.
I can't afford to be trying to like move over myself when I have cables attached to me. It's why I refined certain things to where I have a backtrack that is of me playing guitar, but I told myself I refuse to not sing to that person directly.
Yes.
Because realistically, that, like, to me, if I relegated that to a button, I would not feel good in myself.
Yes.
Because I'm not owed anything. And one of the biggest hurdles of this year was, for 10 years, I've been working on my voice, and I was too scared to sing in front of everyone. I was in a death metal band before really doing more singing in terms of things. And it was with Archaic One and Twitch that there was one day where I made something for Arc, and suddenly it was like I had given myself permission to authentically be myself, and then that kind of took off, and I started to become more comfortable with it. And then I ran into a problem where I realized that I could not take my guitar up off the wall all the time.
You're right.
Because I nearly broke the thing, you know? And so I had to look at what was I willing to compromise on and what was I not willing to compromise on. And what I'm willing to compromise on is that most people can play a couple chords. Great. What I'm not willing to compromise on is the authenticity and the communication of the gratitude.
Yes.
And the main reason for that is because I feel like if I start looking at that from a metric standpoint, where it's like, you got to shorten things to certain things, I'm just like, well, then I've lost the soul of what I set out to do, which is to create a space where people feel like they can authentically communicate with me, that they're safe to communicate with each other, and that the gratitude is not just some paltry thing.
Yeah. Well,
That doesn't necessarily mean that I have to like completely like, you know, go into supplication and be like, oh, I'm not doing the I'm not worthy thing, like from Wayne's World. You can still be authentic within a certain amount of time and be tactful.
yes. Well,
That's a skill.
that absolutely is true. The thing I'm going to say first is that there is this perception that dead air, people are afraid of dead air on Twitch.
Yeah.
It's that old perception from radio. The thing is that this isn't radio. We have our faces on, like for some of us anyway, we have the camera on. People can see us. They can see us moving around in the background, you know, doing whatever we're doing, or we're playing a game, whatever it is. You don't, like when you're live, you don't need that to be afraid of dead air, because there's going to be moments, especially if you're, you know, streaming by yourself, chat's quiet, you're just playing the game. If you can't think of something meaningful to say, and you're just babbling out of your ass, it's worth about the same amount as that dead air would be.
Yeah, and it's funny
And
that you bring that
like
up.
you say, moving to get your guitar, you want to handle your instruments carefully. You want to make sure that they stay in good condition so that you can use them for what their intended purpose is, especially on stream. So, you know, somebody inordinately suggesting you need to speed up, you're still making content, even if it's you moving around the room, right? You know, wiggle your butt a little bit or something, make it a little bit more interesting, or, you know, whistle or something, if that will make them happy. But you're moving with a purpose. And that speed is required for that purpose to do it properly.
Exactly. I'm so Trigger Happy was saying, honestly, a lot of people think I can be cold or I don't get excited over things because I'm not always smiling. That isn't it. I just don't like playing something up beyond what I'm able to express in a particular moment. I don't ever want to seem fake. See, Trigger Happy, it's a brilliant point that you bring up. It's also why I've had some reflection over the last couple of days, because, like, Angels, I'm really, really glad that you brought that up in terms of dead air. I am afraid of allowing exposition in a game to take over what I'm saying, because I feel like for a while I thought if I don't talk, people are just gonna be like, and I realized, wait a sec, there is merit to allowing myself to experience a story with somebody. North Wolf, good
hey
to
Wolfie,
see you, my friend. And so that's the thing, is that, like, recently it was, I don't know why it took this, but it was getting out and away from my desk and going up north about 30 minutes and going and hanging out in a creek bed for like 3 hours with my fiance, and, like, I know this sounds kind of funny, but allowing my vision to extend more than 3 feet, to feel air on my skin, to hear ducks playing in the creek that I was in, to hear a woodpecker, where I suddenly realized I'm allowed to be involved in the experience I'm having.
Yes.
And it's not, I don't have to, I don't have to be the Morgan Freeman of my own channel. I don't need to narrate everything. And that's a very scary thing, because I hear a lot of advice on saying, like, you have to keep talking constantly. It's like, then I have my friends that literally, like, their voice is out in the first few days and they struggle with, you know, being able to speak, and suddenly you're not able to articulate yourself and be present with people as much, because you have denied yourself the very experience that you wanted to have yourself with people when you started out, which is enjoying a story.
Yes.
Enjoying an experience with each other. There's a tactful way of making sure that there's engagement between things. But say, for example, you have Baldur's Gate 3. That's something that I was messing with, and I started getting uncomfortable because there's, like, dialogue choices in that, and I was like, and in my mind, because of the stress of the last couple of weeks, I was like, I have to talk over this, and I realized, wait a sec, I started doing this because I loved the story, and I love experiencing and sharing stories. It's like watching a film with somebody. It's like reading a story to somebody as well, or hearing an audiobook or hearing a podcast, where you can kind of look at each other and go, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
You know? And so to give yourself permission to be in what you're doing as opposed to of what you're doing, also lands better, because suddenly anyone that's experiencing something with you realizes you're just as engaged with what you're doing.
Yes, exactly. You're not just doing it in the background.
Yeah, and suddenly, for some reason, I think that sometimes we lose track of that, because when I first started out, it was just like, you know, I would try and keep up as best I could, and I allowed myself to be human, and then I started hearing different things where they're like, oh, you have to be completely, like, on it all the time. It's like, well, I'm not a computer. I'm not someone that can auto-generate my response time to things. And giving yourself to be permission, but also giving others the permission to be human as well, I think changes the culture that you generate. Whereas everyone assumes I input data, you output data, right? I'm not a computer. And if I was, I'd be a bad one. Like, realistically. And so, like, trying to, like, I don't feel like you're necessarily swimming up against the grain necessarily of a certain culture, but it's kind of like it's a challenge to try and facilitate that kind of culture where it's like, we're here, and what human connection is allowing us to be fallible.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
and learning how to skillfully carry yourself through what you're doing, which means that like that is something that you can improve on over time, but you also have to take a step back and reflect each time and do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a funny reason why, like, I had a friend say, why do you make videos of yourself telling you something from the past to you in your stream? And I was like, because in that moment I was present with that thought, and I have to remind myself sometimes.
Yep.
You know?
And to be fair, they're good content too.
I try. I have fun with it. If I look at it and if I have that smile that's like, you're being a dingus, then I know that it lands that way. Otherwise, it's just kind of like,
yeah.
Why? You know, more things is not always better. Hi, Kira.
Kira.
Good to see you. And that's like why I think that refining what you do, like you said, is learning not to judge what you've done as bad, but to improve upon what you are already doing, and to kind of relax into being yourself. It's why, like, I mean, this weekend I went through all of the channel point redemptions, and I realized no one redeems this.
Yeah.
No one does. Why do I have it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's probably because the one time I did it, you know, I wasn't really in my body doing it. And so, like, I've either consolidated things or I've gotten rid of them, and I've replaced them with, like, you know, something that I really, really enjoy, which is speak gibberish to me convincingly. There's no set time limit. I get to decide what that is, and if there's an emotion that I think is not tactful to articulate with certain words, I can very succinctly articulate that with gibberish. Yeah. So the emotion is released, but I'm also not affecting the mood of my space.
Yes.
You know, and it's amusing because you have someone where you're looking at me and like, see, like, what?
Nani?
Or you have someone, Nani, if you have someone tabbed and you hear someone going, what bambles? For flobble wooble woogle. It's like, is someone having a stroke somewhere?
Yeah.
Like, are you okay? And that comes down to that authenticity thing. Like, who are you, and how willing are you to be present in that? I think the other danger on the other end is also giving yourself permission that you don't have to give every inch of who you are to everybody. That's what we're talking about, honesty and transparency, right? And that's challenging as well to work with, because I think more recently my mind started going to the edge of transparency, and I was starting to think after I would have an evening with my friends, how did that land? You know, what was that nice to be around? What was there actually a positive experience? Because there is a difference between having a tantrum and having an authentic moment of despair.
Yes.
You know, and learning where in the context of when that is. You know, if you really are, like, and I want to encourage people, if you are truly uncomfortable and you are wanting to pursue something, give yourself permission to say, friends, I love you. Something very intense is coming up for me. I would like to process this and come back to you when I'm in a much more stable state of mind. I'm going to raid out now. I love you. I'll see you next time. Yeah. If it's getting to that point, give yourself permission to do that, because the people that understand that you are human and that want to support you as a human being, as a friend, will return. Yeah. And they'll ask you, how was your time away?
Exactly. Well, I mean, just yesterday, I was in one of my moods that happened, you know, that whole imposter syndrome and those things. I am like, I don't have a fear of success. I am terrified of being boring. Absolutely terrified of being boring. And everything I had planned on streaming yesterday and was doing things, and my whole mood just disintegrated because I just got into that headspace of, oh my God, couldn't decide what I wanted to do. Is anybody even going to come? I'm probably going to be boring. I'm just fell apart. And I just said, all right, I'm not doing this. And I disengaged and basically went to bed.
Yeah.
Because I knew that if I stayed up, I would just continue to spiral and fuss about it. And I just had to break off, disengage, and put myself to bed.
Yeah. And I think the you know what's the funny paradox of that is that I think there's a lot of fear around if I'm not present with things socially, suddenly I disappear.
Yeah.
And actually modeling behavior where it's like, hey, you know that self-care that we all parrot and talk about? Guess what? Sometimes you have to do it.
Yes, you really do.
You know?
And I was fortunate to get to do that earlier this week, and I'm just waiting for the temperatures to go back up again. I got the hammock out for a day, and it was glorious.
Hammocks are a beautiful place.
Oh
dude.
my god. I love my hammock. I love you too, Sir Frog, and I know, Kira, you are the last person to worry, like, I'm gonna say this. You are never boring, my friend.
Kira, you are the... I still maintain, I met Kira a while back, and we were in a Twitter chat together. And the memes that this dude pulls out of their hat, I was just like... I tried once to, like, do the meme banter, and I was like, no, there's just no way!
One of the top 5 Kira moments is the chicken dance.
Uh-huh.
That he did that one day. That was glorious. Absolutely glorious. That was one of my favorite top 5 moments on Twitch.
Well, then is there a clip of that?
There is a clip.
I need to see it.
There absolutely is a clip.
Kira, if you have the space of mind at some point, either I'll go find it or you want to send it to me, mate, because the chicken dance is very grudgingly near and dear to my heart.
You put a hat on your cat, Sir Frog? Did you take a photo of this? Pictures where it didn't happen. Yeah,
evidence, please. Evidence, please. But the boring thing that you were talking about, that's also the other fear, right? And what's funny is that I have a tendency to try and not... I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't like to follow trending things if I look at it and kind of go, it's not my jam. It's why Cyberpunk was a massive thing.
Yeah.
I decided to wait a month and watch other people experience it before I preemptively bought it. And I was very glad that I did because the resounding feedback that I got was, oh my, well, this is fun to some degree. It didn't live up to what it was. And so that's another thing, is that being authentically yourself also is recognizing, what do I resonate with? It's why I don't really step outside of my quote-unquote comfort zone. It's why I had some friends encourage me to get the game Dead by Daylight because everyone was playing it together. There was a thing to do with your friends.
Yeah.
And while I love social interaction, I used to work in a haunted house, and I told myself that I wouldn't anymore because I put a young kid into shock once. And not just like, oh, he's scared and like shaking, like, you know,
complete shutdown,
silent scream, eyes dilated, shaking.
Yeah.
And it's because he was Batman and I was dressed up as the Joker, and I was covered in blood, and we had the sign on the front that said, "Don't send your kid through if they're like under the certain age or if they're not into horror." And I'm cycling back to that because from that moment forward, I realized that I wanted everything into my life to relate to lifting people up and to try and light people up. Because I've experienced profound darkness myself, and I never want anyone to experience that. And so I, on a whim, decided, you know what? I'm going to try this thing. And I tried it once, and in my mind, I was like, for me, it didn't resonate on what I was interested in. I saw the value and the fun that it presents to other people, and I'm not knocking it. I just realized that I cannot relate to this thing authentically.
Yes.
And as a result, I can't create anything beautiful from it because I don't like it myself.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yes. I've seen lots of people, and like, I know people enjoy playing it, and I enjoy watching people play it because I enjoy it. It does absolutely nothing for me. And it's just like, same with Among Us. I can't get into that game. Holy crap. We have a raid. Ark, you beautiful bean.
How are you doing, Ark?
Welcome in, Raiders.
It's so good to see you. I love that. Sorry, I'm enjoying it from. I'm
Oh, I know.
enjoying that.
I love my. Well, you
Hey,
are
Ark.
absolutely welcome in, Ark. And now we're covered in emojis.
Yeah. I forgot
Arkafam.
what I forgot what we were talking about, but I'm so happy that everyone's here, and
I know.
we were talking about Ark. Actually, that's
Yes,
how we met,
we
I
were.
believe.
We absolutely were talking mad shit about Ark because you know.
No, it's not. No, the Kira's emote is that's perfect. Like really, we were talking about things that like it's fun to watch certain people experiencing things, but like you said, funnily
Yeah.
enough, I've wanted to dip my toe back into Among Us, but part of me also is just not very engaged with it because I hope this doesn't sound like a soapbox thing, but I very, very much try my hardest to not speak inauthentically, which means that I'm terrible at lying.
Yes.
Awful, dreadful. And there is context for it when it's humorous,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what Among Us is. It's
Yeah.
dramatic irony.
Yes.
I know something that someone else doesn't know. The horrible thing is that I've played Among Us where someone asked me, Hermit, are you are you the imposter? And I said, well, I didn't kill that person.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, Hermit's out. Like, let's vote him off
Yep.
the island.
See, my problem
You
with
know?
it is, see, I spent my young preteen teen years working the carnival. So I'm a certified carny. So I'm very good at lying because that's part of what we did.
Yeah.
Especially working games and certain rides. It was, you'll have fun, blah, 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 doing the things, whatever it was to get people engaged with the ride. Basically, Twitch is a lot like the carnival, only cleaner.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
but with Among Us, I just couldn't enjoy it
Yeah.
because either you were trying so hard not to get caught or you were trying so hard not to get killed, and it just wasn't fun for me.
Yeah, I got stressed out actually a couple times. And
Yeah.
I think the other aspect of it is that this is going to sound very, very funny from a logistical standpoint. I get stressed out when I'm not being present with the people that I'm with. So the idea of streaming something where either I have 10 people in voice chat, and even if I had one person in chat, suddenly my brain kind of goes, I can't keep up with both.
Yeah.
I can't do it. And that's personal to me. So that's not a knock on the game or anyone that does that.
No, it's too many
stressful
inputs.
Personally, yeah, it's too many inputs for me, which is funny because people are like, Hermit, you're distracted all the time. It's like, I'm very good at being right here. And here and here and right, like one thing at a time, which is why I have a hard time doing multiple things where I feel like I have to be present with a lot because then I feel like I'm just doing it poorly.
Yeah.
And that's why like this authenticity thing is that I don't want there's a place where I don't want to step outside of a certain comfort zone because what becomes of myself is that I start getting sloppy with being myself, and suddenly I become perturbed, and suddenly you see someone that has gone from being joyful and happy, being present with what they're doing, to I'm now very, very, very nervous and anxious. Am I upsetting anyone? If I missed something that somebody said? And like you can give yourself permission to do that. I think that's like if you have a certain standard, right? Where like you tell people like we're playing Among Us, friends. I'm not going to be able to see what's happening consistently. But if people don't understand that and they're like, oh, he doesn't care about me. It's like, it's not that. It's that the nature of what's happening in front of them is just like, it's a lot,
Absolutely. Two things.
So that's, yes.
I'm going to interrupt for a moment. One, Samurai is a lovely being, but in Among Us, she is an absolute assassin. If you value your life, do not play Among Us with Samurai. Secondly, we're going to shout out Archaic, and this will take however long it takes, depending on the clip that gets pulled.
Oh, I'm ready.
If it pulls a clip. Because this thing can be finicky at times.
Oh, I will say, Angelus, that's Stream Elements and Stream Elements in particular has been a bit goofy recently.
Yes.
I don't know if you've experienced
Twitch
that.
has too.
Yes. What's funny about that, and I hope it's okay to bring up, but when this is an interesting thing that I'm still processing and trying to relax with, is that I go through my stream manager a lot afterwards to reach out to people for myself, to reach out and say thank you. And what's funny is that I'm seeing in chat sometimes that so-and-so is rating with a party of 5 or 20 or 18. And then I look at my stream manager and says so-and-so is rating with a party of 1.
Yes.
And my brain goes,
Mm-hmm.
Twitch, are you staying hydrated?
Yep.
Are you okay? Because what's funny about that is that it can affect a little bit to some degree how you relate to what's going on, but it's important not to. You should always be as present as you can be. I think the only time that like I have actually gone slack-jawed is when I was rated by someone who had 142 people.
Yes.
And it just made me kind of go, well, that's new.
Yep. Yep.
That's very new. And the only thing that scares you though is when you see the differentiation between the two. It's kind of like, am I being botted or is there something wrong? And it's like you don't want to have to think about that. So
yeah.
Twitch, we love you.
But fix your
sync
shit.
Up what you're, please sync those things up so that we're not sitting here panicking, going, "Am I talking to one person or 142 people?"
Yeah.
You know.
See, if 142 people suddenly kicked in my door, 3 things would happen. My butthole would pucker. I would stare blankly at the camera for about 50 seconds. And then I would take a stiff drink of whatever happened to be handy, even if it was water. And then I would start talking.
Yeah. It's a thing. You know,
yeah.
Something I wanted to like, if there's anything that comes up from what we were talking about, Angelus, something that tangentially also is a thing. When you're working with media that is potentially
So, tell you what.
available.
Oh, there's the clip.
Give it me for the
There
both
it
of
is.
us. I died!
Wow, that was so
Lol.
fucking loud.
There you go.
Well, so much for that.
Oh, excuse me.
You still believe?
You know what's funny is when people click
Goodness, you
things
got any lucky rabbit's foot that you can rub on?
and you don't realize that someone is
I
taking a
feel like-
long clip of you. I always feel super self-conscious when someone does a minute-long clip
Oh, I
of
know.
me doing anything, and I'm just like, is it over yet? Is it over yet? Is it over yet? You know? The point that I wanted to come to was something happened recently where a young person came to me that was just starting on Twitch, and they reached out to me, and for some I don't know why. This is that imposter syndrome thing that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I wanted to ask you because I'm dealing with this thing, and I think that you're the right person to go to.
Yeah.
And my brain went to, I'm just another
What?
human being trying to, like, you know, exist on the planet.
Yeah.
I have no idea why my advice is going to actually help. What's funny, though, is that what they brought up was that they had this experience with Twitter and with social media. And it had to do with how they had an interaction online where it quickly turned toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that came up in my mind was that, while social media is a really, really excellent tool, I think that realistically we need to look at it sometimes and compartmentalize certain things.
Yeah.
If you have a personal account and a Twitch account, it may behoove you to have them separate. It may behoove you to have separate ones.
Yes.
And the reason being is that I've seen a lot of people experience some very negative things, and then they blow up, and then it turns into some sort of drama.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel kind of silly saying this, but my response to that usually is, why did you poke the bear?
Yeah.
Why did you incite more dialogue around something that could simply be either ignored,
Mm-hmm.
or you could take a step back from it,
Yeah.
and then come back to it very rationally and compassionately. Or you could do it not in a public space, and you could reach out to them directly and say, hey, I see this upset you. we should relate like humans
Mhm.
so that you can actually have a human experience, you know. Kira.
Yes, Kira. Poke so hard.
Yeah. And what the experience was, and I talked to them over voice chat because I wanted to hear their voice in it, because if they type it, I can't tell if they're really distressed. And what it came down to was that they were trying to hold somebody accountable online, and someone else misinterpreted what they were saying. And
Get your food, Ark. And your shower.
love you, Ark.
Love you.
And what ended up happening was this massive, like, negative space where everyone was like biting each other's heads off, where everyone was angry, and I responded to him saying, like, why didn't you just delete the dang thing? Clearly what you said had an adverse reaction. I think what you should have done is you should have looked at who it upset, deleted it completely, and then reached out to them and said, I understand that I was passionate about this and it upset you. Can we resolve this? And that has to do with learning to skillfully relate to certain things. What's funny is that what they were trying to do is they were trying to keep someone accountable for being a bigot.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, due to the words that they utilized in order to describe that person, they were in fact perceived as a bigot. And so there's a blessing and a curse with social media.
Yeah.
That unfortunately, even if you have a good intention, your action may not be so good. So really think about how you want to engage things. I love humorous posts all the time. But when it comes to certain things, I say try and deal with them personally.
Yes.
On a one-to-one basis. And also, funnily enough, if you react to something, you are boosting the signal of that person.
Yes. Very often,
Suddenly, you have given them the floor. Their content is now your content, and you share this space with them, and is that what you really want?
Yes. Well, this goes back to what you were talking about earlier about how people are trained to react to things through marketing the last 20 years, especially in the 80s and the 90s. It was all reaction media
Oh, man.
through most things. So
Yeah.
now, social media is basically the epitome of that. You know, person one will say thing. Everybody reacts to things. That's why I stress, like, all my social media is integrated, because my career through game industry and game journalism, everything else, it's all been interconnected for the last 20 some years. So it's kind of too late now to separate the two. But the thing I always tell, especially my staff writers for my site, when it comes to their written work, or when I, like, even during my jobs, when it comes to written work, when it comes to social media, once you write something out, read it over and listen to how it sounds before you hit send. Whether it's an email, a tweet, a message, you know, a video rant of you ranting about something on TikTok, it doesn't matter. Always listen to it out loud before you hit send.
I should do that with Twitter a lot more, Angelus. I am awful at spelling.
Same.
So bad.
That's why you'll see me tweet something and then it'll disappear and then it'll come back. Is because I nuked it so that I could fix a typo. I do that all the time because that's ADHD brain right there. Or that's my phone being an asshole and auto-correcting something. And, you know, it'll go from a well-intentioned, thought-out response to somebody to, I really think that the world needs more turkey dinners and hookers and blow. And I'm like, that's not what I meant to say. So, you know, Twitter needs an edit, but I'm just saying.
I don't know why they haven't done it. I'm not, like, can we
'Cause they're
please
evil.
have that? I am kind of curious if it is a very interesting way of keeping people unapologetically accountable for the things that they say. And the irony with that is that I think that it's like humans change constantly.
Yes.
So why are you setting things in stone, you know?
And yes, the world does need more turkey dinners, hookers, and blow.
True.
Not going to lie. Sex work is real work.
That, you know what's actually interesting is that most people didn't know this, but I have friends that are in that industry, and most people are kind of like, well, you know, your channel is very much like if we were in Hobbiton, that doesn't seem to line up. And I was like, no. you're misinterpreting a thing because you are putting your own projections of what you assume that thing to be is.
Yes.
You've watched either Lord of the Rings or Monty Python. Well, Monty Python's not really the best example there, but you've watched Lord of the Rings, and you've attributed, etiquette and propriety of the Shire onto how something is presented. The core values that I really carry is, as long as you're not hurting yourself or anyone else around you, I really don't care what you believe or what you do. And as long as you're accountable for what you say and what you do, I don't mind. Don't care what it is.
And to be fair, the Shire probably has a very thriving sex industry. I mean, they're so relaxed.
The feet pics.
You know what third breakfast is, right? I mean, come on. We know what second breakfast is. You know what they're going to do after. They got to burn off that extra energy. So they don't get too
That's
big.
why they stay so trim.
Exactly. Those hairy feet are meant to be kept warm. They do things with those. I'm just saying. You're going to tickle somebody's bum that low to the ground. You need hairy feet.
I think I have to reiterate earlier when we were talking in ARC's chat, I actually was really cry laughing when you said something about furry feet. I can't remember what you said, but I literally died.
The song gives me hairy feet.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Oh man, that's another interesting with integrity with content creation is that I think also when you start looking at it, not to get to get out of, I really enjoyed that, but to go back to a little bit.
Yes,
I think the difficult thing right now is trying to figure out what technically is in good integrity and what's not. Because for me, parody law has been a slog of something for me to try and look through. And it finally took me hearing someone say, these are what's acceptable for me to kind of go, okay, good. Because I looked for 2 weeks on what parody law was. And they're like, well,
yeah,
you can sample certain things, you can do certain things. And there's certain advertisements, they don't actually have to buy the rights to something if it's short enough, you know? And I'm just like, can we just have a clear-cut thing here? Because something that I love to do is I love making parodies of things. I'm also not skilled enough to remake Kashmir by myself.
Yes.
I can't, you know? And it's also why I think that when you start learning to create things, you also have to look at the integrity of what you're capable of doing and being willing to say no. No, I can't do a thing, you know? And that's been challenging as well, because I think that also, when you're talking about growing something, you want to say yes a lot, right?
Yes.
So that's learning to refine what you're doing as well, which is also, that goes back to with social media. Post things that are near and dear to you that you're I don't know. I'm down for a discussion on this. Either post something that is intentionally meant to be a joke, where the reaction is going to be absolutely ridiculous, and respond to it as such. Or only post things that are really near dear to you, and recognize that people are going to ask you, are you willing to die on that hill?
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it's not worth it. Sometimes someone brings information to you that you weren't realizing, and suddenly you have to adjust that thing. That's another thing that has been difficult to reiterate and learn over time. Change is constant, and I hate it.
Everything is a process. I'm going to take
that's hard.
a short 5-second break because I need to refill my drink. So if you want to entertain chat, sing a song, or
I can do that.
Or whatever you want, I'll be right back.
Might as well. I have a guitar. Who wants a song? I can try and do that. This has been an absolute delight talking about these sort of things, friends. I don't really get an opportunity to do that that often. But just wanted to thank everyone for being here today in general. I'm so happy to be hanging out with Angelus because I met him a long time ago on Archaic One's channel, and I've always just enjoyed speaking with him. So, I'm rereading some of the same lines. That's another funny thing, friends. Have you ever reread the same thing over and over and over again? I've done that a couple times. So, while he's gone, I'm gonna try and do something that I love to do. not. I hope he has toilet paper if he needs to go to the bathroom, because being human can be inconvenient when you're doing a thing that's necessary. And I enjoy this thing that we're doing because it's so nice just to have someone to converse with things that are not puddle deep. So thank you so much. All right.
No toilet paper for who?
No,
What did I- What?
I thought that you were going to the bathroom. You said drink,
did.
and I was okay. Good.
Uh,
I was
be-
trying to make up a song, Angelus, and something about toilet paper came up, and that's where it was.
That's fantastic. No, in the interest of honesty and disclosure and transparency, I'm in my 40s. My bladder does not retain things like it used to.
Oh, mate! I after 25, I started to notice things a little bit. You know, and now that I just turned 30, and
Yeah.
what's more frustrating is that I tell myself I need to stay hydrated, and I'll have to wake. If I go to bed at midnight, I'll wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and my bladder's going, "Sorry, bud, you need to go to the bathroom right now." It's just like that 8 hours that I was trying really hard to get
Yep.
has now been interrupted. And I'm going to wake back up in 3 or 4 or 6 hours, depending on what's going on. And I'm going to be a groggy, irritated bean.
Yes.
And I'm not going to enjoy it. So it's like, that goes into like the balancing life thing. Because I think that content creation is such a nebulous thing because it's so freeform.
Yeah.
That you can also get lost in creating balance in the things that give you stability in order to be present with what you're doing, you know. And if you don't pay attention to that, I think that sometimes you can show up to the thing that you're trying to do, and that can be an added stressor as well, where it takes you away from what you're trying to do as well.
Yeah. Especially
I mean,
when you're live.
Oh, mate! Like, I mean,
Mindset and mood are so important. Like there have been twice that I have streamed when I shouldn't have, and I recognize that.
yeah.
And I ended up ending stream. I would rate out. Once I didn't. I just ended stream. I'm just like, I can't do this. I'll see you guys later. And I was done. Because I shouldn't have went live, but I tried anyway, because that's when I had a schedule. The short period of time when I had a schedule, which now I no longer, I can't.
I think it's important to recognize what works and what doesn't work in your life. You know, and that's why if anyone's like, oh, does that mean that I shouldn't have a schedule? It's like, no. You need, this is that critical thinking thing.
Yeah.
You need to observe in your life what works for you.
Yes.
And if that doesn't work for you, that's okay.
Exactly.
You know?
Like if schedules work for you, because some people need that regimented time. That's how they function. I need a routine, and I don't handle changes to routine well, but I don't need to have everything be routine.
Yeah.
Because content creation is something that I have to do spontaneous in the moment so that I have the proper energy to do the thing. If I commit myself to something, I'm going to try to do it, whether I should or not. And that's the story of my first marriage. No,
Sorry. It's my first long-term relationship. Oh,
yeah.
that was...
Yep.
We can talk about those sort of things, but it's interesting how those things crop up as like parallels, right?
Well, yeah, because
you know,
where you are now is the abridged version of your entire life's experiences.
Oh, yeah. Being present with that and learning to... So it's funny is that I also think that a lot of people aren't taught that, right? That like... I mean, it's why I love Yoda a lot. You know, and what was it? Skywalker, always looking to the horizon or to the past, never on where he was, what he was doing.
Yeah.
And there's definitely some periods of my life where like I could relate to them as like, could be angry with them. It's important to process all emotion that you're going through. But at the end of the day, trying to glean a lesson from them is what makes it productive and what allows you to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard sometimes. And it can be something as like recognizing that I cannot be in this mood and stream. There was a Sunday where I did a 12-hour thing, and then I showed up to Monday and I wanted to make music, and I was burnt toast.
Mm-hmm.
But I told myself it's so important to stay on the schedule to do the thing.
Yeah.
And I realized, you know what? I needed more sleep. I needed, because I'm an ambivert. Funnily enough, most people would assume like, Hermit's an extrovert. The name is funny. It's like, well, actually, there's an inkling of truth in it. I'm reluctant to be present with people when I need quiet.
Yeah.
And I need quiet from time to time. And if I, don't see it soon enough, what ends up happening is that it'll culminate into one experience where suddenly I'm not present with what I'm doing. I'm not present with the people in my life. And I get irritable, I get angry, I get moody, and the entire week and or day gets thrown off because I don't recognize that it's okay to take space for myself. It's okay to stand your ground and say, hey, I don't need this right now.
Yeah.
I cannot do this right now. And I think that, I don't really want to use generalizations. Western culture does not accommodate for that very well.
No.
Everything is always constant. Everything's always live. There's always something happening. And it's funny. It's why, like, I don't watch the news very much anymore. I go into YouTube and I look at the blips of the videos there. And I tell myself, I would rather be relatively informed than misinformed and or uninformed.
Yes.
And it's the same way with I would rather be absolutely present than sort of not. And that's, I think, a learning curve for everybody. There's no one size fits all for anyone in general. It's why I really enjoy watching YouTube videos of how to like kind of refine things, but I always take them with a grain of salt because I also have to you have to recognize the personality of the person that is presenting the information to you operates a certain way.
Yes.
And they operate comfortably that way. You may not operate the same way. That does not make you bad or worse than them. It just means that you don't operate that way.
Yes. And
Right?
actually, YouTube is something I wanted to touch on earlier. And that has to do with the question of dead air on stream. A lot of that perception, not just like, I use radio because I'm Gen X. That's what, that's where my brain goes. But YouTube plays a big role in how streamers on Twitch and other platforms stream. Because if they started watching YouTube videos, all they see is, however long that video is, there's constant chatter. The thing that they don't recognize is a lot of the dead spaces were probably edited out.
Oh, yeah.
Which is why they don't see them. So it gives that perception that you have to talk constantly to be successful, because they see these successful YouTubers who are just constant babble from start to finish. And that's the magic of editing. That's not because they're doing it. That's because of editing.
I've done that for, there are very few people that I know that can actually, like, very much just, like, go forward and on and do it in a very articulate, like, it's funny is that I right now, one of the things that I love doing, because I live on a property with my family, my dad does a YouTube podcast on civility, and he parallels the teachings of George Washington as a Mason and the historical Buddha. And his podcast is about looking at how we can learn to be more civil with each other, in general, and how to communicate better. And there is editing to that. Like, my dad's very good at speaking, flow of consciousness, what he's doing, but I still have to edit it sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not a live stream. And what's funny is that I think that, like, learning to give yourself permission to do that will allow you to also feel more comfortable in who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know very few people that can speak for 3 hours consistently,
Mm-hmm.
while having something meaningful to say. And either they have had a breadth of experience with that, where they have drawn conclusions that they feel they can articulate and share succinctly,
Mm-hmm.
and it's probably integral to what they do with their livelihood.
Yeah.
You know, or like you said, it's just a combination of a bunch of jabber,
Yes.
which in and of itself can be amusing.
Can be. It can
to a
get
degree.
repetitious.
Yeah, it can get really, really repetitious, and it's something that, like, it's why I'm glad that we're talking about this, because it's something that I'm starting to recognize in myself, is that I would come away at the end of the week and my voice would be blown out.
Yeah.
And I would have a voice lesson the next day with my mentor. And I had been working on things, but then suddenly I'm paying for a lesson to show up to have constructive criticism. And because I'm not being present with the fact that I'm allowed to shut up
Mm-hmm.
during a broadcast
Yeah.
to save my voice,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm now sacrificing something that I really, really, really love and value by being inauthentic and not inauthentic, but being unskillful
Yes.
with what I'm doing. And it's why, like, you know, my other buddy that is a music teacher said you need to warm up and warm down after you do stream. If you talk a lot, or if you perform or sing, you need to warm up and warm down. And then also, I have a tendency to shout more when I have earbuds in, because I am trying to match volume with what I think is.
That's why I
actually
only have,
happening.
like, when I had my
Yeah.
headset on, I only had one ear cover. It's the same with the earbuds. I only have one in, partly because I don't want to have to shout to hear myself, but partly because I need to have that situational awareness of what's going on around. I can't
Yeah.
not hear what's happening, especially with the kids. Even if they're
course.
screaming at each other, I have to have that noise because it keeps me in the moment.
Yep.
I need my environmental atmosphere to keep me grounded so that I can do the things I do, because Twitch is a performance art.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to look at that and accept that for what it is. I think that's the other thing, is that learning to accept that you are allowed to be yourself and that can be celebrated.
Mhm.
The only trick is do not get lost in that. Do not
Yes.
develop an ego around it. Do not develop some sort of thing where suddenly, I feel like we're cycling back to that a little bit, but it's kind
It's
of
an
like
important point. And
it's something that I struggle with, because
Yeah.
I personally don't like talking about it, because the part of my mind that is engaged with it is like, why are you bringing this up? You know, don't
Mm-hmm.
bring attention to it. And it's just like, well, it is important in a relative experience. We're all doing this thing.
Yeah.
I also want to see my friends succeed.
Absolutely.
That is an integral part of who I am. So when you have a dialogue about these sort of things, there's a streamer that I know that I have a dialogue on a regular basis where they have 50 to 70 more people in their chat, and they talk to me. And one of the most interesting things is that the same anxiety you experience with seeing one person in chat exists at the same with 110.
Yes.
That doesn't go away.
No.
In fact, actually, it exacerbates itself,
Yes. Hello, Arthur Reaver.
funnily enough.
Welcome in.
Good to see you, my dude. Love you to bits. It's just interesting, because I thought that I was going crazy. Like, it's like, why am I suddenly getting more and more anxious? And their response was, it's because you're not used to experiencing support.
Yeah.
And you have imposter syndrome around it.
Yes, you're not
And
used to the attention.
Yeah. And the thing is that, like, you don't have to do anything other than just go, this is okay. Because the moment that you start clinching up around it, that's when the mood change.
Mhm.
And that's when people leave, because then they're suddenly like, all right, they're not
Yep.
being authentic to themselves, you know? And then suddenly that becomes an experience where you don't want to relate to that person, because you feel like, oh, I'm being supportive, and they're terrified. Maybe the right thing to do is to walk away. You know? Oh, Reaper, love you to bits.
Absolutely
So
appreciate
it's
it.
interesting. It's important also that this actually goes into a topic that I really, really, really love, which is mentorship. If you love something, or if something is really near and dear to you, do your best to find someone that authentically does that well and is successful at doing it. You know? Bless you. That was wonderful.
Muffin going to bed.
But finding finding a mentor that you can connect with that can help you refine the skill that you want to do is really, really, really important.
Mhm.
And I think that there is a danger in that sometimes, because if you want to look for, it's hard to look for support. But I think with any performance art that you do, it's necessary.
Yes.
It's why artists have producers. It's why certain people have session players. You know, I know a lot of artists that they write the song, and it's really they write the lyrics and they write the melody, and then they have session players that they trust that they bring in to kind of add flavor to whatever they're doing. I'm not going to name anyone because I don't like. I was thinking like I watched, who was it? Lady Gaga did something where I like initially I did not like, you know, listening to her music.
Right.
And then I listened to her album Joanna.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly I was very engaged.
Yeah.
Because there was something different about it, and it's because I feel like she allowed herself to find people to collaborate with, as opposed to having a producer that says, you need to make content like this because this is what's working. And what's funny is that after a while, you start hearing about how certain celebrities, they have health problems. They have drama in their lives. They have a myriad of issues. And I mean, Twitch is its own biome, but like I am very curious, and I've always wanted to ask people like Ninja or Harris Heller, like, what does your self-care look like?
Yes. That
You know?
That's a relevant question. And like you mentioned about how you're about talking about a certain thing. You don't want to bring it up, but at the same time you want to talk about it. Especially like between us and with other streamers that we both, you know, will talk to at different times. Sometimes you have to take out the dirty bits of your soul and air them out. And you have to discuss them, because if you don't, it will sit and fester like any other wound. That little ball of darkness will grow and accumulate, and you have to recognize that thing in yourself that maybe I'm not doing this thing that I should be doing. I'm not taking care of myself, or I'm not recognizing that I'm getting all this feedback, you know, I'm getting all this love. I'm not fully processing it. I'm just feeding off it and trying to give it back, but it's not coming out the same way it should.
That's a very, very good point. Learning to process and really integrate gratitude is a very hard thing, especially if you come from a background where either you've experienced bullying, abuse, or not had it modeled to you as well. I think that's the great paradox of my life, is I've had very, very loving parents and siblings, and I've had very, very toxic relationships, ironically. Because the one thing that was very modeled very strongly to me was that I needed that taking care of others can be a beautiful thing. Now, unfortunately, if it was a pendulum between not taking care of people and sacrificing everything to be at the beck and call of everybody else, I'm much more over here.
Yeah, same.
The irony being is that your intention is good and your heart can be in the right place. There are people who will take advantage of that.
Yes.
A good example. What's funny is that there was an example where I had a conversation in voice chat with someone that I was very touched, because their rapport with me has been very in other channels. Like briefly, I see them around. They come and say hello. They're very, very glib and kind of like, you know, elbowy and funny with me. And then I got an opportunity to talk to them. And he said, like, I've been meaning to tell you this for a while, and it's because I'm worried about you. And I said, did I do something wrong? And he's like, no. He said, I'm very jaded, and I feel like Twitch can be a very scary place. Like, you are a compassionate human being. Are you aware that people are going to try and take advantage of you?
Yeah.
And it didn't land immediately because I hadn't thought about it. And then I thought of all of the conversations that I had where I was witnessing something in chat where my gut reaction was, I think that person's pulling my leg. And I didn't give myself permission to just shut it out.
Right.
You know, and it was at the sacrifice of of thinking like I need to be really skillful with this right now and say something meaningful and disarm this. And the reality is sometimes there's such thing as wrathful compassion where you're like, no, like it's okay to be like no.
Mm-hmm.
That's all right. Learning to like stand up for your space as well, especially with a channel. Yes, you are the person on screen. Yes, it is something that you're creating, but there is a zeitgeist of a culture that you're also creating that is not completely in your control, but it is your responsibility to be the caregiver of that.
Yes.
You know, and that's a skill in and of itself. And learning to do that, well, is a continuous process. I don't think I've actually banned that many people in my channel, because I've had a couple experiences where I actually helped trolls kind of like process why they were being that way.
Mm-hmm.
But then there have been a couple moments where like I was in absolute terror where I was like, I want to ban this person. They're making me uncomfortable, but I don't want to exclude anyone. And I realized maybe at this point, the best thing for me to do is to shut them out. Yes, you see a place that is loving and compassionate and accepting. You are misbehaving and you have been asked to not, and you have persisted. This is the accountability for that. And hopefully that'll be a lesson that they can integrate. It's also not my responsibility to think about what they did afterwards. And that's also very hard as someone that cares a lot.
Yeah, exactly. You can care too much. The thing I'm going to say to that, there's two things. One, I've only ever personally banned one person since I started in June. Now, there have been several people who have been banned from the channel to date by my mods because I trust my mods that they will know. Like there are times when a troll will come in and you can they're just being kind of trolly, and you can tell when you can kind of, and then there's those people who will just cross the line. And 9 times out of 10, those people who come in hard like that, I don't even see it before my mods have jumped on it, banned them, and it's deleted.
Mm-hmm. That's the benefit of having a chat.
You have to have
3 to 6
people
seconds.
you trust. You have to have people. You have to trust your mod, and you have to have mods you can trust. Because myself, I would probably let things slide longer than I should. But the people I gave swords to, they don't fuck around. Like,
yeah, it's a funny thing. It's funny. Listless Deity is one of my good friends, and he's one of the first moderators who, funnily enough, also I met through ARC.
Mm-hmm.
And Sir Frog, I'm curious what that is. If you want to share that with us, I'd be more than happy to talk with you about that, because we are talking about the integral parts of Twitch.
Absolutely.
But
I say that word a lot.
a lot of the time, what's funny is that like you said, as the content creator, we have a little bit more leeway, I think, because we want to be inclusive. What's funny is that from the perspective of someone that has witnessed the growth of a channel and or been part of the culture, someone else's tolerances are different, and that's why I trust my mods to take care of things. Listless Deity is someone that I call like the grinning executioner.
Mm-hmm.
I do my best to de-escalate things. If it doesn't get de-escalated, usually I have a word now, and I don't mind people knowing. I say babushka. It's very hard for me to think of a word that I can bring that up in context where I'd say it. If someone hears me say that, if someone's been misbehaving, suddenly they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and it's sort of like we even have a sound where it's just, let's kill the bot or execute it, And it's important, I think, also when it comes to working with that stuff to try and do it in a way that's humorous. It's why I, as a musician, I like making funny things to like create levity where there might not be,
I'll write that in chat.
Oh, Sir Frog, bless you. No, I understand. That's an imposter syndrome. It's like, why would someone trust me?
Yeah, exactly. It's because I do.
And That's the thing about processing gratitude, Sir Frog. It's okay to process that and to accept that. I think the biggest fear, and it's something that I like. I don't mean to tangent too hard, but
No, go ahead.
pride is okay to have, as long as it does not cross into the realm where you don't reflect on what you're doing.
Yes.
And that is a process and a thing that you have to develop over time. It's something like, I'm 30 and I wish I was doing it. I wish that I'd done it more when I was 20. I would say, funnily enough, that culturally speaking, Western civilization doesn't really allow you to process much
No, it doesn't give you
between the
time.
ages of 12 and 25, you know?
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of pick these things up as you go along. And then and even still, learning to develop a state of mind of observance in what you do is important. And that's what you were talking about with the judgment thing. It's why I got more comfortable with singing, because and this is why I look for mentorship. My voice coach, my mentor and friend, realistically, reiterated a lot of concepts that I'd been reading for a long time. And somehow he succinctly put it into, it's like, you need to step out of a judgmental state of mind when you are doing things and go into a place of observance. That doesn't mean that you don't look at everything that you're doing. All it means is that you let go of attachment to what it was, and then come at it from a standpoint where you're like, all right, this didn't work and this did work, and then move forward. Doing that is terrifying, hard, and it never ends. You know,
I understand that feeling, Sir Frog, and it takes time to process and relearn. Here's the thing with me and Twitch. Streaming was something to do during lockdown. That was the original intent. The byproduct was, for the longest time, because of my childhood and my teen years, being a survivor of mental, physical, and sexual abuse, and dealing with depression for a very long time. The last 20 years was a very long story of depression and being an introvert and being antisocial and being disconnected from the world. Twitch has become my playground to relearn how to socialize again. Learn how to connect with people, how to talk to people, and how to re-engage with humanity. Because before I didn't want to. But once I reached that point where I started making positive changes and coming out of myself and recognizing that I'm no longer that person that I was, I've now become comfortable with who I am, and now I have to relearn how to communicate. That's what started this off. Now I'm at the point where I talk to everybody now. Like, I don't shut up at work, my day job anymore. Like, I used to go to work and I wouldn't talk at all. All right, Wolf, thank you. Good night.
love you to bits, my dude.
But now I've become that social creature I was when I was a kid. Like that, I was a very social person when I was a kid. I was very extroverted. I was very engaged. I had friends and I was doing things and, you know, then through the process of events that happened, I shut down completely and disconnected. You know, I only engaged with the relationship I was in and my kids, and that was about it. And a couple of friends online, but nobody off. I had no real friends beyond the relationship I was in. So now it's been a process of learning how to communicate, but it's also been a process of learning how to accept compliments and how to be
Very
grateful.
difficult.
It's incredibly difficult. And you have to learn to balance the compliments with and being humble. You have to learn how to accept the praise, but at the same time have realistic expectations of yourself and realize that, yes, while I'm getting all this love, it doesn't mean that I'm better than anyone else. It just means I'm having a positive impact on other people. So
Well, and
that's the point. Like, you have to learning to accept other people's trust is incredibly difficult because you're putting your trust in them too. Because trust goes both ways.
Well, that's also the other difficulty with receiving compliments, right? Is that if you have come from a place of mistrust, which I have, like there are very few people in my life that I really like. I would say I've developed friendship over time. And what's funny is that the people that I've kept locally in my life, more than anything, we've all had similar experiences of either mistrust or trauma, and we all really sometimes will sit back and look at each other and be like, "You doing the thing where you're not taking my compliment, right?" It's like, yeah, it's, got to get over that sometimes. But it's like you don't want it to go into a place of too much pride, but at the same time, learn to integrate it more. I think that like it's true that our formative years can have a massive impact, because I think, like you're saying, like experiencing those sort of things can make you want to shut things out, or you adjust your behavior more. I think from bullying and some what's funny is unpacking certain things, because when I was younger as well, I didn't realize that there was some behavior from people around my age that I didn't recognize as sexual abuse until I got much older.
Yeah.
And I did not recognize the drastic rippled impact that had on my trust with either young men or young women.
Yeah.
And so I would look at certain things, and it was only until I found a mentor that looked at me and said, like, you have an issue with jealousy. And I said, it's because I envy people's ability to accept compliments and to be themselves, and to be, essentially, I looked at them as titans of character.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, how can you do that? I don't understand that. I want that. Why can't I have that? And it's like, well, have you processed your trauma? It's like, no. Guess what, bud? You gotta. And you have to go to that place.
It is a very long process. I'm like, even with all the progress I've made, I'm still processing certain things, because at this point I can now look objectively back, and I'm noticing things that would never have occurred to me. And I think I tweeted about this or wrote about it a week or two ago. My most profound discovery of the last couple of months was I realized when I was a kid, this was obviously, my generation was the latchkey kid, right? We came home from school, the house was empty, we were by ourselves. When I was a kid, I was jealous of those missing kids that were on milk carton. I was jealous of them because and I didn't realize why until just recently. It's because I had that thought in the back of my mind when I was a kid. If I went missing, would somebody care enough to put me on one of those milk cartons? And that hit me very profoundly, and, it shut me down for a couple of days. You can see the gap in my stream due to that. But that's not a bad thing. That was me dealing with that grief from when I was a kid of those feelings. Now finally being able to process and put it into context for myself what it was. And the only reason I had that realization is because I was in a conversation with Muffin about why Gen X kids all love cheese.
I really want to understand how that kind of joke. Okay, please explain.
Well, the thing is, when we came home from school, right, we let ourselves in. We weren't allowed to cook anything because a lot of households didn't have microwaves yet, or like when I was in junior high, that's when we started getting microwaves and stuff like that. We weren't allowed to cook anything, so we were allowed to eat cheese, either cheese slices or blocks of cheese, and we'd have milk. And of course, cell phones, our computers, like my TI 800 when I was in high school was, there's more space on my watch than there was on that computer. So we would read the boxes of cereal, we'd read the back of the milk cartons, whatever it was. And so milk cartons, it was always these missing kids. And I would sit there alone in the house for 2-3 hours with this missing kid on a milk carton staring back at me. And I would actually talk to the kid, asking him where they were and stuff, having this conversation. And deep inside, I had this burning jealousy. And I was sitting there holding the cheese, talking to a kid that I would never meet, and just feeling lonely and unwanted and neglected. But I had to have that cheese trigger to connect everything together.
And that's the that's the most interesting thing about the human mind is that referential memory, right? It's funny that Sir Frog's also talking about because that what they brought up just now is that cheese thing is that bullying the self.
Yes.
I do that constantly.
Yes.
It's why as I've gotten older, and it was only in the last couple of years that I was closer to my parents because I was living on my own and I was with somebody else and I was living a whole separate life, and then I ended up building this thing on the back of the property. I don't know if you know, Angelus, but I live in 2 tiny homes that I built.
Yes.
On the back of a 1/4 acre, right?
I remember you mentioning
and
it. Yes.
That took some thought processing. Cause it's like I'm 30 and it's like my mind went into like bullying myself. Like, is everyone gonna look at me like, oh, I'm a failure? Or like, why are you still living with your parents? It's like, well, I have a good relationship with my parents. And I used to feel bad about that. And I still sometimes do because I have friends that complain to me about their parents all the time. And the bullying thing only became more clear to me when I returned back home and I started having to learn to integrate living with other people, specifically my parents, and recognizing that the span of maturity relatively had shortened from I am the child to I'm an adult with certain experiences to where I can contextually like relate to them.
Yeah.
And because you live with people, sometimes you get into like conflict. And what's funny is that my dad and I would get into conflict. And I kind of chalked it up to like, I think that most young men end up having conflict with their fathers in some way because it is the old guard and the new guard.
Yeah.
A little bit. Right. And my dad now has a way of relating to me where if I'm complaining about something, he automatically goes to trying to help me with things, which is brilliant. Because sometimes what he used to do is he would constructively criticize what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I would crumple. I would crumple. And through discussion, we recognized I am the best at kicking my own feet out from underneath me.
Yes.
I'm very adept at that. Why? Because I want to succeed, but I'm also very, very keen of my own failures. Because as a kid being bullied, I was always belittled, and I started to believe the narrative.
Yeah.
That I was less than. I am still processing that to this day. It gets easier each day. It gets harder some days.
Yes.
The point being is that with self-bullying, you have to learn to be merciful with yourself, which is very difficult because you know your own crap.
Exactly.
You know when you're lying to yourself. You know when you're placating yourself. You know when you're being lazy.
And you know exactly how to hurt yourself.
Yes. There's a song that I love very much that's called Bloodsport by a band called Sleep Token. I wish I could share it. I don't know if it's DMCA free. I don't know if it would be the right mood either for it. But
drop it in Discord. I think I
Huh?
I think I still have that channel for music. And if I don't, I will make one.
Yeah.
Spotify playlist, drop it in there.
Yeah.
That's the channel for sharing music.
The song, I think more realistically, if I went back and I re-listened to it, it's about him and a former relationship, right? But when I heard it and what I experienced from it, because what it is, it's grief.
Yeah.
What it triggered for me was a experience where I was looking at who my conscious self that is speaking to my unconscious, or that kind of like I'm speaking in the mirror thing.
Yeah.
Most people don't like talking about it because you sound like a crazy person. Like, oh, you talk to yourself. It's like, you're damn right I do.
Yeah.
Constantly. You do too.
Oh yeah.
And the thing that I got out of that song was this feeling where I realized I was driving home one day from a gig. Because my friend and I developed a company that was live streaming bands when everything shut down to try and keep the music scene alive. And I started to cry during the song. And I couldn't figure out why until I realized it was the lyrics, I'll make loving you a blood sport that I can win. And I realized that I have not been fighting for myself to love myself for 30 years.
Yeah.
And that I wasn't stepping up the way that, like, if someone bullied my friend, I would stand in front of pretty much dang near anybody, you know, and stand up to them. And I realized I was not showing up the same way for myself because I was believing in the narrative that I wasn't worth defending, which is a very, very terrifying thought to have.
Yeah.
When you're into your 30s.
Well, it's the same when you're in your 40s. That
Yeah.
moment when you wake up and realize that you spent most of your life considering yourself expendable for everyone else, you lose gravity.
Yeah, and it bleeds into all the things that you love, you know, over time. And so that's actually why I've really appreciated what the Twitch platform can be.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what it does is it brings up social interaction, and it kind of gives you an opportunity to sort out, pardon me for saying, it gives you an opportunity to sort out your shit.
Yes.
Right? It really helps you sort that out, because I think one of my biggest fears is I never want to stop growing. It's kind of like that thing, like you said, I never want to be boring.
Yeah.
The underlying thing in my mind for that is, like, that means that I'm not growing. Boring is not growing, right? So if I'm not experiencing new things and I'm not integrating new things, then realistically I'm at a standstill, and suddenly I'm just another brick in the wall at that point. You know,
well, that means you got to eat beets. You have any pudding?
Eat your beets? Oh, so they said beans, and I'm like, dear.
No, I said beets.
About those beans.
Sorry, I had Pink Floyd in my head. I went there.
You know what's sad is that I haven't actually listened to that much Pink Floyd, and I've been told that I need to do so.
Yes, you do.
You know.
Yes. 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 I can endorse that completely. But here's the thing that nobody likes talking about when it comes to compliment and accepting compliments, especially people who have been bullied or abused mentally, or abuse of any kind, really, is that whenever you receive a compliment from someone, you're always waiting for what comes after it. Because the bullies or your abusers would at times give you compliments, and it gave you that little ray of sunshine, and then they turned around and they'd hit you again, or whatever it was that they did. That the compliments always seem to make the negative things not quite so bad in your mind, because you're thinking, oh, they complimented me first. So now when you get a compliment, you keep expecting the punch to come after it. But it never does now.
When's the other shoe going to drop?
Yeah, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. But it doesn't. But you're on you're on that bleeding edge of anticipation.
I think that's the challenge with like you were saying, who do you associate with? Who shows up for you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it reminds me of a video from Medea, who I'm not very present with who that is as a character, but it's that they had like their own show, their own series or whatever. And there was a monologue about who do you keep in your life?
Yeah.
Because some people are kind of like, if you're thinking of your life as a tree growing, right? Some people are like leaves.
Yeah.
They're there for a season. And it's okay to recognize that. But when in terms of integrating compliments, I think as social beings, it's important to find people who can be present with you, who are taking care of themselves to the best of their ability, but also care about you and share the same values as you. And that's why when you're talking earlier about who do you relate to on Twitch, who do you relate to in your life, it's like my radar now is I look for people in my life who are kind of like other trees where my branches are bristling next to them more than anything. And it's not a perfect metaphor, but I don't really allow fair weather friends to really exist in my life. And the moment that I kind of experience that, And it doesn't have to be anything major. It could just be that being that like I can call someone saying like, I'm feeling really down today, and their response is like, tough luck, dude, whatever, and they hang up. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
Then I'll text them and say, are you having a hard day, to get some clarity? It's like, no, I just think that you can, you just need to get over it, dude. It's like,
Yeah.
and again, that's not a perfect metaphor.
No, but I get what you mean. Here's the thing with which that some people, it's a mistake that we've talked about often across several podcasts, and other people talk about, is that you can't be friends with everybody on Twitch, but you can be friendly, and you have to find that balance. But you have to accept that not all your friendships are going to last longer than a minute. But when you do find those people, you're not like with you said, you call someone and you're saying you're having a rough day. You're not looking for a response. You're looking for somebody to just listen.
Stand witness. Yeah.
Exactly. People need to learn how to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Which goes back to the language of emotion that I mentioned near the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so critically important that you don't have to say anything to be present for somebody. You just have to be in the moment, listening to them. And a lot of times people will work out whatever's on their mind on their own. They just need to say it out loud to somebody.
Yeah. What's funny is that something that I've experienced, like, I'm laughing because what you're saying is so true, that when I see the converse of that, where someone is incapable of recognizing that it's like reading the room thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people who say like, "Oh, you ignored what I said. Go back to what I said," and it's just like, that was 30 lines ago.
Yeah.
And I'm relating to something that's like, it's like, oh, like, and I still do, but it's very, very interesting when it's kind of like, you're not giving me permission to be human. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm trying to be present for everybody. It doesn't matter if it's like, I don't know anyone that can stand in a room with 5 people and have everyone talk at them at the same time, and you can go right to every single person. And when I see that response to like, oh, you're not being completely present with everything, like, as you can, it's like, I'm only human, like, for God's sake.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't give me grief, like what you can't, and it's why, like, I've frequently told anyone that's been in a live chat or anything, it's like, if someone misses what you're saying, just repost it and recognize that they're not being rude. No. They're human.
Exactly.
They're only integrating what they can at any given moment, and
they can only handle so much being thrown at them at any given time, and things are going to get missed. Like, that's going to happen.
It's also why, like, I think, like you said, like, you cannot be, quote unquote, like, blood siblings with every person that you meet on the planet. And it has nothing to do with your capacity for compassion.
No.
It has to do with the bandwidth that you operate at as a human being, It's why, like I said, like, I've always been curious. How do you relate that? I would love to ask someone, like, specifically, like if we're going to bring up a cultural reference. I would actually, if someone asked me if you could pay $500 to have a conversation with somebody that is successful, who would you talk to? It's like Keanu Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know how that man operates. He's very successful in what he does. He's typecast to certain degrees, and I never hear anything about him other than he's trying to do his best to take care of people, and he's very serious with what he does. And the reason why I want to relate to somebody like that is because that is someone that does something that is a craft, that has learned to live in good integrity with that, while maintaining a life where he integrates friendships that he can maintain.
Yeah.
Whereas
and
I also
he has separation between work and personal life. He has always been very good at keeping that separation.
Yeah.
That's because he's Canadian.
Yeah. What's actually funny about that, Angelus, is that the more that I talk to anyone from Canada, the more I want to move there. Funnily enough, I'm half English. My mom's English. My family's from Hertfordshire in England, which is southwest of London, if I'm remembering correctly. My dad's American, but went to the UK for school, and I do love to, like, the half truths that you tell people.
Yeah.
I always tell people my parents met in a mental institution, and they're like,
Mhm.
that explains why you're nuts. And like, no, they were, they're not counselors. I'm gonna biff what it is right now. They're not social workers. It's another thing that they work inside of certain facilities, helping people essentially. And the only reason that they ended up talking was because the TV broke
Mm-hmm.
in the room. Because my mom wanted nothing to do with men ever again. The point being is that culturally speaking, I've had a very, very difficult time integrating into Western culture. And that's not to say that I think that there is no one here that is actually compassionate. In fact, most of my friends grew up here, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? But every time I meet people from either the UK or Canada, I'm just like, you're so much more my speed. Dang it. I live in California in a place that is, I would say, toxically superficial. And
Yes.
what that does is that it does not create a good environment to learn good habits for communication. And in fact, it's actually why I think that, like, my location is why I struggle with certain things. The nice thing is that I've met more people who experience similar things from a different standpoint, and we come together when we give each other tools to work on things. And that's a thing with mental health that actually drives me nuts also, is that I would rather hand somebody a tool that they can learn to work with to fix their own thing than be someone's Advil.
Yes.
Because you keep coming back, and if you have the same symptoms, my bottle's gonna run out.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why, people will say, here's a thing that a lot of people, there's been a lot of back and forth about this, especially on Twitch, about how streamers aren't therapists, right?
Yeah.
Like I have always looked for the right terminology for where I sit. I'm a mental health enthusiast.
I remember you mentioning that once,
Yes.
actually, in a chat. Mental health enthusiast is a great way of talking about it.
Because I am enthusiastic about maintaining my own mental health and for other people to maintain theirs. But it's not my responsibility to help them maintain theirs. I can listen as a friend, or I can be a friendly ear, which I don't mind. And if people need to talk about something, I'm here. As one says, my DMs are open, whatever. But ultimately, I'm not a therapist, but I will help direct people to the resources that they can use to get help.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up. I very recently had to work with that, because I'm a mental health enthusiast as well. And the thing that I know that I would love to facilitate is I want to create a safe space for people to be able to articulate how they're feeling, to feel that they can be, heard, that I can stand witness to that everyone else who is in that community can stand witness to that and say, we understand that you are suffering. We care that you are suffering. How can we help you? How can we redirect what you need to do to help yourself?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, unless you are a trained psychotherapist or a clinician or,
Crisis manager.
culturally, crisis manager, it can actually be more detrimental to try and help sometimes. I would say that the discerning wisdom with being able to help someone is when you know exactly the same sort of situation that someone went through, and you can say, I'm not telling you to do this. Take this with a grain of salt. This is how I experienced this. I experienced the same thing. This is the steps that I took to get through that. That was my journey.
Yeah.
If any of that helps you find your footing, I hope it helps.
Yes.
And that's about as much as you can do.
Yes.
And the reason I bring this up specifically is because I was reached out to, I'm going to keep this as vague as possible with being as helpful as possible. A community member of mine reached out to me because I have a safe vent space, and what that facilitates is you can articulate how you're feeling, and let it out.
Ho, ya
There's
duck,
no
duck
expectation that
down
someone has to
the
fix
stream.
what you're
You're a
experiencing.
hoe, your mom's
It's
a
that you have a
hoe, I
safe
am
place to articulate
gardening.
what you're going through, and sometimes, like you said, that's all you need, right?
I accidentally hit the archaic button, so we had Ark singing the Ho song while you were speaking. I'm
I'm wondering if universe are trying to tell me not to talk about it. No. I love that. Someone reached out to me, said that someone was being unskillful in a space that I had curated that
Yeah.
was supposed to be a safe place where you could articulate what you're going through, right? Where you could feel like the community is safe enough that you're like, I'm having a bad day. I just need a space to let this out.
Yes.
Without, and there being any judgment, at all.
Yes.
I have facilitated that. I've
Mhm.
actually had people reach out to me saying, like, I know that you don't respond to everything in those chats because you're only human, but it really helps to have
Yeah.
a space like that. Someone came in, and when someone was articulating that they were having a bad day or bad experience, they were kind of vague as to what it was. And the person's response, who I know is not a mental health professional, said, you're experiencing mental abuse. You need to get out of there. You need to call such and such and do these sort of things. And my mind went to, oh no. Oh no. That's not skillful.
No.
You're bringing your own trauma to something. And it was very apparent to me. I didn't
Yeah.
see it until someone mentioned, hey, Hermit, we understand you're trying to create a safe space for things, but I think you should pay attention to this. And the reason why I decided to is because, realistically speaking, Twitch streamers, unless you are actually a mental health expert, you should not be facilitating a space where you are telling someone what they should do.
Exactly.
Because even if you have the best intention, unless you reach out to them directly and you get on the phone with them and you say, I'm willing to listen to you, if you've experienced the same exact thing, and like I said, you give them the wisdom of your journey,
Yeah.
and tell them to take it with a grain of salt. If you start just saying, you're experiencing this thing, I'm
Yes.
defining this for you, you need to do that.
You can't diagnose.
You cannot diagnose, and it's dangerous to do so. And the reason is that you could actually be adding to the narrative of that person's mindset.
Yes.
And then suddenly you are responsible for any action they take afterwards.
Mhm.
And that's where things get complicated. So
Yes.
as someone that is, facilitating a space, it's important to recognize that and to facilitate more rules and, again, reading the room
Yes.
a little bit with around what you
Always
need to
read the
do.
room.
And so I responded to that by explaining, we created this space so that you could all feel like you have a safe place to be. However, I would say, unless you are a mental health professional, I would please ask you to, what's the word that I used? Refrain from using any language that defines or diagnoses somebody's experience, because as much as it could help, we may not know exactly all of the context of what's going into that, and by
Yes.
doing so, we can actually cause more harm than good.
Yes.
I appreciate the enthusiasm. I encourage you to support your friends. Please do not do this.
Yes. I would suggest, and this is something that I've done on the channel, this is in Discord, yes? Create a post in the channel that you pin, and as I have with the one panel on the channel, list resources for mental health for help there, so that someone can bring up that pin and those resources are there readily at hand. That is the most impactful thing you can do as a non-professional.
It's actually why I have a tools section, funnily enough, and it's kind of broad, where I've either listed websites. I've actually mentioned one of Ark's. I think I've listed one of Ark's friends. The organization he works with, Dex, works with Hope for the Day,
Yes.
I believe, in there. And I was even asked by someone, because I spent 4 years working with a life coach who I felt like wasn't trying to feed me Kool-Aid. And I'm happy to talk about what that looks like. Where they taught me a meditation that was about learning to process emotion through like meditation, and there's a lot of different thoughts around meditation. My biggest pet peeve is when someone says, "Oh, meditation is about having your mind blank," right? It's like, no, it's learning to have unattachment to what's going through your mind and learning to process it as it goes by. So that what you're saying, actually, Angelus, I will be actually taking your advice to heart, because I realized after that experience that I thought that it was common sense, and clearly it wasn't.
No.
And that is my own biases coming into effect when I'm trying to facilitate something. And instead of getting angry with the person, I realized, oh, I have a responsibility to this. This is my best way of addressing this, and I'm so glad that it happened so that I can refine how I can be supportive. Because at the end of the day, you are my friends. I want to support you. Thank you for this opportunity. I also reached out to the person that did that and did my best to articulate that to them, and they disappeared. Which, again, we were talking about, I cannot control how they respond to the thing, right? And instead of agonizing over that, I had a brief, vague discussion as well with a friend of mine who said, you did what you could with what you could. Hey, Majin, it's good to see you, brother.
Yeah, you can have all the tropical punch you want.
Oh, man.
I have a sound alert for you, Majin, and I'm now going to play it.
Ara. You are bad boy?
Because you are a bad boy.
Oh, no! No! Okay, so, I have a not to tangent too hard, because I love this discussion. You want to talk about, funny, not knowing how to read the room things.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes you need the context, or you should do some research before you act on things. Listless and I were hanging out one day in voice chat, and the thing that you just played, I did not know about it until recently.
Okay.
And the experience and the dramatic irony around it was extremely comical, in my opinion. The streamer that I was going to meet was someone that had come into my channel randomly. She's a Norwegian cosplayer who's very, very sweet, but also very, very funny. And she connected with me on an evening where she's a psychiatric nurse. Had a very, very bad evening, and we became good friends because she came into my stream while I was singing about taking care of yourself and learning to take space for yourself. And apparently she was literally removing herself from a situation to do that. So we finally, at one point, I followed back, and I ended up going over to her channel, and there was this redemption that was like 1,000 channel points. And I'd been there a couple times, and Lissus and I were watching in voice chat together. And he's like, "Oh, man, I want to hit the RR redeem." And I was like, "I got you, bud." Didn't ask a dang thing. Hit it. And she looked at the camera and very seductively and very, very convincingly did that. And my face went brick red. And Listless just looked like he said, "You had no idea what that was, huh?" And I was like, "I feel very compromised right now. I am an engaged and in love human being." And it brought up all these moral conundrums where I took a deep breath, and it's like, it's okay to not know about something and to experience that. And I was just like, that wasn't what I wanted to feel. I thought this was going to be funny. And instead it's like, oh, I got excited, and I feel bad for getting excited now.
Oh, it was funny for other people.
And what's funny is that Listless just laughed at me and is like, he's like, I knew that you were going to go through that crisis, and I still let you do it. And I was like, this is why we're friends. This is why we're friends. I love you, Majin.
I have a sound alert for that, too. Mission complete.
Yeah. I completely forgot what we were talking about, but I'm glad that we were laughing. That's what really counts.
I love talking about serious things, but we have to have a balance of humor because we need that laugh break.
Yeah, it's
right.
That's actually a skill that I'm still trying to learn, Angelus. Is that
I'm working on it.
I'm a Mariana Trench guy. But don't get me wrong, I love laughter as well. But I have this unfortunate tendency that if I'm very passionate about something, I will literally grind it to dust.
Yeah.
I will miss the mark sometimes. I will read the room to allow it to open up. and then I will not notice when the tolerance for the space is given out.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's why I think having friends and having feedback sometimes. It's why from time to time my buddy Dracos, who's also a moderator, will interrupt me in a very intense moment that I think is very tender, and I'll realize that I have been going on for 5 minutes about something serious, and he's like, just like, "We're going to sleep. You're
Yeah.
getting too deep, bud. You
See,
know, like
This
come
is
back
the
to shore."
space for that, so it's good. But there's that ADHD in me where I have to just every now and then I just have to goose the humor just a little bit, just because.
Oh yeah.
It keeps us from pontificating.
Yes. Because even with like we're talking about good intention of creating a dialogue,
Yes.
right? You can bore people to death with
Yes.
sentimentality.
And you can lose your perspective.
Yeah. Because it's like having a fisheye lens, right? Suddenly, you're just like so sucked into it that it's just like, we get it. You have kicked the dead horse.
Yeah.
You have kicked the dead horse. It's paced. We love you. And that's also good to have like friends that can remind you of that as well. It's why I have friends in my life that I love having around, because they're more pragmatic, and so they'll be like my grounding rod sometime. I have a friend locally that I've been friends with for 16 years. We haven't talked as much, but it's like you can have friends in your life that you don't talk to for months, and you can still talk to them afterwards.
Yes.
I have a funny story about his 21st birthday, but I don't know if it's contextually relevant to anything other than like growing up.
I'm always here for stories.
All right, so his
Always.
21st birthday. Okay, so and again, friends, if you have any questions
Kage boy.
that you want to ask,
What's up, homie?
I would love to answer them, but just for the benefit of humor, 21st birthdays and growing up can be a very interesting thing.
Yes.
So in my town, there is a tradition that when you turn 21, you go to each bar, and if you have your ID, you have to have your ID on you.
Yes.
It's your birthday, they give you a free drink. We have, I think, 12 bars on the same street going down the main drag. And so my buddy was a champion. He made it through every single bar, and the beautiful thing was he didn't live too far from downtown, so we walked. Well, he's also a little bit heavier than us, so we walked him back home, and along the way, of course, he got ill. You know, had to get the evil out a little bit. And we got home, and his girlfriend at the time, he was lying on the bed. He had a bucket underneath him, and she's like, "Oh my God, what do we do? Like, do we have to take him to the hospital?" And I was like, "Well, no, it looks like he has bile. We've been giving him fluids. He's throwing up water, right?"
Yeah.
And I go into my head, and I'm just like, you know what? Either it's going to be a $500 ER visit that his parents are going to be pissed off about, because he's going to have to get his stomach pumped. Or I could do something else. And I said, everyone move out of the way. So I picked up my buddy, and he lived in a granny unit, and he had a stand-up shower in, like, just in the same room. And I take him into the bathroom, I close the door, and I strip him down to his boxers. And mind you, he's, like, pseudo-awake.
Ragdoll
like,
physics?
Not really. He's a ragdoll, right?
Yep.
And I managed to get him... and I keep my clothes on because I love the guy, and I know that the next few moments are going to be... I'll get there. So I get him, and I push him against the wall, and I keep him there, and I stand in there, and I'm going, this is going to suck. And I turn the shower on full cold. And I let it hit me first, and I let it slowly go onto his body. And he starts, his eyes go from cross-eyed to, like, focused, and he looks at me, and he's like, "What are we doing in the shower?"
Yep.
And I said, "Bud, it was either this or the hospital, and I chose this." And he said, "You ever tell this story, I'm going to kill you." And of course, from then on, I had to tell it for the rest of my life.
Yep.
And it was kind of a beautiful bonding moment, because everyone's like, "What's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you?" I have two situations. One, I walked in on him and his girlfriend once. That's why we have the I call you 30 minutes beforehand before I show up to your house and knock on your door. A good thing to have with friends in general. Again,
Yes.
me not knowing certain things when I was younger. I experienced that. And two, that experience is like, what's the most awkward thing? It's like, I helped my buddy up basically naked in the shower once.
No.
And that's friendship sometimes.
Yes.
No, so wrong. I didn't punch him in the gut. Fortunately, the shower went right into his face. So, he woke up the next day. He thanked me. He's like, well, I'm glad that I didn't have to spend $500, but also, like, I've never had a friend of mine take a shower with me like that. And I was like, well, hopefully you never will. Did you learn your lesson? He's like, no, I didn't. So he went out and got blackout drunk again at one point, and it was still funny, but he doesn't do that anymore.
I have 3 thoughts on this. 1, it's sad to me that you guys have to wait till you're 21. It's 19 here. 2, going to the hospital to get your stomach pumped would cost well, when I was 21, it would have cost $6 for the taxi. And 3, drunk friendship story. My friends rolled me into a ditch so I wouldn't get hit by a car because I passed out on the road home.
They should have dragged you home. What the heck, man?
They left me in the ditch. It was a nice summer day. It was fine.
As long as you woke up and you're just like,
Oh, yeah. Oh, it was good. They left me in some bushes. It was.
That nearly happened with my. What's funny is having a friend with a younger sibling and growing up with them, and then they turn the age of drinking, and you take them out to drink.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very surreal experience. Like, I knew you when you were 11.
Yeah.
This is very weird.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he actually, he tried, had to go to the bathroom in a bush once, and he just fell into the bush. And, like, both my buddy, his older brother, and I just kind of looked at each other like, who's going to turn him over? And I was like, that's on you, bud. Like, your siblings, you've probably seen each other naked. I'm going to go over here. I'll help you carry him into the house. Yeah. But you are dealing with the zipper.
Yeah. The rest, you're on your own. Sorry.
Yeah,
this far and no further.
That's actually an interesting tangent. Has anyone how did you have you ever had an embarrassing moment on Twitch live streaming, and how did you recover from it?
An embarrassing moment.
That requires people to have shame, and I know very few. I know a couple people. One person I know who doesn't, and she's incredible. But I'm curious.
Not really. I've had moments where I would mess up, like podcast things, Windows will be out of alignment or something, but that's not necessarily embarrassing. I just laugh it off because it's what happens, right? So I can't really think of anything that I've actually been truly embarrassed about.
Well, I hope that is the trajectory of the rest of your life on Twitch, and because I have a story.
I've answered the door when Mormons came, canvassing. I've answered the door naked. So that tells you my level of shame doesn't really exist.
Yeah. Okay. It's I'm gonna actually like. So I have a funny story of a friend who did that. Actually, he lived in Arkansas, and he lived in the middle of nowhere, and so he thought it was very weird that a car that he didn't recognize was driving up the driveway because he lived out in the sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And out comes this mother and son, and the son's about maybe 15,
right?
And mind you, my buddy was playing bass guitar butt naked in the middle of his living room with the bass guitar over his junk, and he was just having a grand old day because his dad was out of town, and he was just just being himself. And he just thought to himself, I could either get dressed or I could answer the door.
Yep.
So, in full fashion, he opens the door, and there's this. She was very sweet. She was actually coming out for her church, trying to invite him and his father, because they were known in the community as not being very involved in the community in capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And there he is standing with the bass guitar, naked, just with the in front of him with his junk on, and he tried to politely let her know that he wasn't interested. And mind you, the son is sitting there in like both horror and laughter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she persists through every polite attempt, even as far as him saying like, ma'am, I'm really not interested. Like, if you want to find someone down the road, just like, oh no, but like you really should, because it's clear that like you really need saving. And finally, like he's like, you know what? And like he took the bass guitar off of himself, stuck it there, and he grabbed the lintel of the door and just presented himself a little more. He's like, I'm really not interested. The kid ran into the car and died of laughter, and she froze for like a minute, and finally went, because she wouldn't look, and she's just like, you know, bless you, my son, you have a wonderful rest of your day, and left. And I love that story that he tells, but it also but also at the same time, like, I have moments of like, I've had one moment on stream that I'm ashamed of, and it was, I went live without knowing, because I was making a YouTube video, and I hit go live on Thanksgiving.
Oh dear.
And I don't know about you, but I'm an emotive person, but if I have no one to relate to, my face goes blank, because there's nothing to respond to.
No,
there's
and you're just focused.
It's just a deadpan, like my face is relaxed, and unfortunately, when I'm like that, it's 1,000-yard stare. Forever. Yep. Also, sometimes I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing with my hands, and so I'm picking all sorts of things all over my face, and I didn't realize it. My Discord started blowing up. And finally someone said, Hermit, you've been live for 23 minutes.
Yep.
We're all sitting in chat waiting for you to notice. And you picked your nose. I was like, okay.
Everybody poops.
And it was like, the only reason that it became funny was because I finally became present, went to my channel, saw everyone. I said, oh my God, is everyone like, you know, what we're doing? And they're like, well, bud, like, if you really want to know. I deleted the VOD, but what ended up happening was we had a moment where I got to feel much more human again.
Yes.
And I got to like experience a level of camaraderie where it's like friendships where everyone was laughing and having a good time. I ended up making up a song on the spot about it for fun. And we ended up getting all together and then raiding someone, because someone asked me, oh, are you going to be streaming on Thanksgiving, which was normally a day that I would do stuff on? And I said, no. Well, I guess I did by accident. And it turned into a very humbling experience where it's just kind of like, cover your webcam, watch what you're doing, and also recognize that if you do something that is odd, recognize that you're human and recover from it.
That's right.
You know,
don't do dirty things in your gaming chair, kids. You never know who's watching. All right,
always not.
I'm gonna take my old man bladder to the bathroom. I will be right back.
I gotcha. I'm gonna read through chat really quick. What her friends were then. Nova Scotia as was like 1,000 people. Is that true, Sir Frog? Okay, so I've never woken up in a ditch, friends. I've never blacked out from drinking, but I have Jackson Pollock someone's bathroom by accident. I call this not call. Okay, so I'm just reading what you're saying. I got 140 something raid when I had like one mate in chat before, and I felt so exposed I just almost froze. Sir Frog, it's a weird thing, right? We're like, and this is the thing. It doesn't matter. Like, again, it's one of the best pieces of advice that I was ever given is you relate to people the same way, no matter how many people are in your chat. It's the same way, no matter what. The verb scares me, Jackson Pollock. Yeah, no, not quite that. It was with vomit. Okay. And that was a much younger a thing. I think one of the interesting things about social media in general is that I think we were talking about that earlier, is that you're always in flux, and that I was just talking about like we're always in change. It's actually an interesting thing. I don't know. I'm curious, Angelus. What do you think about cancel culture?
I posted this recently, actually. There are things and people who, given a certain status, absolutely should be called out. I don't want to say that they should be canceled, because you can't cancel somebody. When you say you're canceling somebody, to me, I think of, you know, the 1920s to 40s mob culture where somebody's going to roll up and pump lead into somebody. That's what I think of canceling. But when, especially people in authority, certain levels of celebrity, or just a very public person, or anyone who does, I shouldn't say that, anyone who does unspeakable things, of whether it's a sexual nature, bigoted, racist, whatever, should absolutely be called out on it. At the same time, we have this generation that is trying what they're doing to cancel certain things. It's more that they're trying to create a separation between themselves and the generation that came before them by saying we are better than that, so this thing should go because it's no longer relevant to us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a mixed bag. Some things need to be called out. Other things, they're no longer really relevant in public consciousness to begin with. So let sleeping dogs lie because they've lost their power already.
Well, I mean, we're talking about the thing that, like, by sometimes confronting something, you actually invite it to be stronger. You give it a platform.
Yes.
Right? And I'm going to preface everything I say about this right now with saying that, like, I'm still doing my best to kind of navigate this. I can think of several things that are very prevalent still, and I think that we still experience it on Twitch. I see a lot of, bigoted behavior sometimes. And I think that sometimes when you put up a reactionary fight to it, you actually invite it in more sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Because it gets louder.
Yes,
it's
you're giving it
why
oxygen.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite interviews that I want to go back and actually watch more of it, but I saw a contextually relevant clip to where you understood what was going on. I don't know if you've seen the thing with Morgan Freeman on 60 Minutes.
I think it.
All right, so the interviewer was talking to Morgan Freeman about Black History Month, and he said, Morgan Freeman, I understand that you don't like the concept of Black History Month. Why is that? Is like, well, I don't think that it's right to relegate the entirety of my history to a month. And It's like, why? It's like, because my history is American history.
Yes.
And he said, well, then, but then their response was, well, we need to have a month where we bring awareness to racism. And he's like, or you could stop talking about it. And he's like, well, he's like, what? I mean, but we need to. It's like, well, no, there's a way of addressing it in a manner where it's kind of like you just let it pass, where it's like you can respond to it in the moment. If you see someone that is screaming at somebody, that is being a bigoted moron, you can tell them that is wrong.
Yes.
Do that. Take care of that in the moment. But if what you do is you respond to it by deifying, almost saying we need to, like, bring awareness to this, suddenly you keep it in the cultural zeitgeist longer.
Yes.
Because suddenly you create more fear around it. And Morgan Freeman's request was, I'm going to stop referring to you as a white man, and you're going to stop referring to me as a black man. I am Morgan Freeman, you are such and such, and that's it. And that is, to me, a both radical and also really brilliant concept. But the challenge I see right now is that is going to take a long time.
Yes.
To unpack. And at the same time, I'm also very open to people telling me, like, well, even if Morgan Freeman said that, like, that's not right. It's like, well, that's why I enjoy change, right?
Yes.
That's why I enjoy new information. But in the way that relates to cancel culture, in my mind, is that people are constantly changing. And so to kind of, like, tell someone, like, oh, you are bad because you said one bigoted thing, let's cancel such and such. You're not giving them an opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
You can keep them accountable, but unless you give them an opportunity to grow, you're being just as close-minded and bigoted as you perceive them to be.
Because that's for the I don't own a Switch frog, so that's for the Monster Hunter Rise version of the Switch. I was advised by several people who messaged me and told me to set up a fundraising goal for that. I don't actually expect it to ever be filled, but I did it at people's request. They requested I do that because various people are playing it. Yeah, not in Canada.
Why is it $500 in Canada? I'm glad that let's talk about the levity that we needed.
$446 before taxes, because the Canadian dollar is worth 70. I think it's 70 cents US at the moment, something like that. So it's $300 in America, but in Canada, the Switch is like 400 and something. So for the Monster Hunter Edition, which includes the game and the Switch, it's 446 plus. Then you add 15% tax, and
Mhm.
and everything else. So that's why the goal is set what it is that.
I'm glad that you went there because I ran out ran out of gas in the thought of what that was, because my mind also goes to like I'm still learning things, and I'm always worried about talking about this stuff because I have a sociology background. I was going to be a social worker, and so again, it's this thing where it's like I think it's like as you said, it's important to be enthusiastic about talking about these things, and I always like asking people what they think of cancel culture because it brings up so many things that we integrate with.
Well, it touches on everything because it's a movement trying to change society, and not
Which
always
I'm
for the
for.
better. Yes, there are necessary changes that need to take place, but this may not be the specific engine to do it. But if it starts conversations, it will be worth it.
Well, that's the good intentions versus good actions.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
I think the most recent thing that came up was what's her name from the Star Wars franchise? She's been dropped.
Yes. Oh, she from The Mandalorian. I can't even remember her name because it's not relevant to me. I know the character, Gina something or other. Her contract was not renewed. She wasn't canceled by anyone. Disney chose not to renew her contract because of stances she took on certain things, and they just chose not to renew her contract. Disney has that option.
Well, that's the interesting thing is that, like, also remembering Friends, you have I think of sometimes, like, to some unfortunate degree, a company actually can be defined as a person now because it has rights, right? You have the option to not relate to things that you don't like. That's also why, when it comes to like certain channels, I do not understand trying to go out onto social media and complain about someone's behavior on stream. If relatively speaking, it will naturally take care of it in of itself.
Yeah.
It will either attract a certain mindset of people, and that's why I think when it comes to like, if you want to keep someone accountable that is actually being bigoted and probably not terms of service, you can report their channel
without having to do it publicly.
If you bring it to a public space, you are inviting drama into your life. Suddenly everyone is looking at you, and are you prepared and skillful enough to navigate that conversation yourself?
Yes. Like, there was a pair of particular streamers that I have had issues with. And I largely did not comment on it. I made one comment about one specific thing once. And that was to give clarity on my side of what happened and why I no longer associate with that particular person. That's not because I wanted to change minds or anything else. This is why I don't associate with this, and I don't want to be part of this. And that's it. This goes back to what you're saying about marketing, about the reacting to things. People see things on social media, or they see things on Twitch, or whatever it is, and they react because they've been trained to react. If I reacted to everything I saw, I would probably be screaming at people on Facebook comment threads all damn day, because sometimes I will look and comment on news articles just because I want that adrenaline fix of wanting to scream at somebody without actually screaming at them. Because there are people I would reach through the screen and bludgeon into sensibility over some of their opinions. I don't engage, but it's very easy it's easier to react to things than it is to just keep on walking.
Well, it's that journey thing also. It's just kind of like, at the end of the day, my friend and I had this metaphor that we really loved. if life is like a river and everyone's in a raft, but if you start having people that are like, building something, their boat gets bigger. Just because the boat that they're on is bigger doesn't mean it's better.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can only see it for what it is
Yeah.
in front of you. If you go onto that boat and you discover that there's something wrong, you have to jump ship and everyone notices.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. Starting out on Twitch, there were a couple streamers that I paid attention to because I noticed that their success, and then I started integrating a little bit into their communities, and I pulled out almost immediately. Because at the end of the day, what it turned into was it felt like almost a pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
And it scared me.
Yes. That's
because it no longer
unfortunately
was
common.
about people, and it really just made me went. Well, I understand wanting to become successful, and I always like the people that I've respected in my life that have done great things. I have noticed that they stay in good integrity with their values, and they do their best to be compassionate to the people that they interact with, and then they move forward with their things. Because that phrase, "good things happen to those who are kind," or what I can't remember what it is exactly, but like and this goes into a success thing. I have gotten in knots over any form of success on Twitch because I so desperately don't want to be that. The irony being is that by resisting that thought, it's like a tar baby. I am not that thing. I just am repelled by it. And the easiest thing to do is to not engage in it.
Yeah.
And it took, I think, I've been thinking about this for 2 or 3 weeks. And it took this weekend going out into the woods and feeling the wind on my face and hearing a woodpecker outside to go, I have been stuck in the trenches of what I'm doing joyfully for a long time, but I got tired and I realized I needed to disconnect thoroughly, to step outside and realize that the world is broader than I have in front of me.
And it's still out.
And it's still out there, and I think that the thing that sometimes that we need to do in order to get our bearings is to step away from something that we love. You can love writing music. You cannot write music constantly.
No.
You can't paint constantly. You can't write constantly.
No.
You need space. Like the hammock, Angelus. Like right. Having the space to go outside and be away from it so that you can give yourself space and time to kind of go.
You need to detox and breathe and process.
Yeah. Because even if you are passionate about something, like maybe you've been so passionate about something that you realize that you can't articulate what you're thinking or expressing your thing because you haven't integrated it, because you haven't given yourself the space and time to do that. Yeah.
And especially on Twitch, like we all want, well, we shouldn't say we all want, those who are trying to do it seriously, who want to make a career of it, or at least make it sustainable and profitable. There's nothing wrong with profiting from your content, as long as the means you use to get there are true to your personality and your values. And you approach it in that way, right? Yeah. That's something that bothers me with some people who I've covered this before. People, when they get money for things, there's this moment where I understand some people feel they don't deserve money, so they prefer people not do it, right? Or they have that reaction saying you don't need to do that. For many people, it comes from a very natural place to say that, right? Other people, they say that, but it's not genuine.
Yeah.
Right.
It's actually why.
And I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of telling people not to do that. I was doing that very early on when I became an affiliate. I'd be like, oh no, you don't have to do that. But the reality is, if I want to make this a sustainable, profitable thing that I enjoy doing, I have to be accepting when people want to support me monetarily. I have to show proper gratitude for that. because if I don't, they're not going to do it. And then any plans I have of making it something fulfilling that I can do sustainably are gone.
Well, it's a two-way street in a very, very real sense, because I think that people assume that it's like, oh, you know, it is a way of showing gratitude.
Yes.
Right? Because like you can, like friends, I'm in California, you're in Nova Scotia, Angeles. I can't give you a hug for you know, making my night.
Yeah.
But I can throw what either bits I have or a sub at you by saying like, thank you for making my evening. This is how I can show my appreciation.
Yeah.
And as a result, showing proper gratitude is by recognizing that that's okay. And that's a tricky, that is something that I will also say everyone has to figure that out for themselves morally.
Absolutely.
I'm extremely uncomfortable talking about it, because I am on like this thought where it's like, I'm extremely grateful for it. I think I've mentioned I lost both of my incomes when I during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I was a massage therapist for 25 years. No, 10 years. I started more when I was 25. Sorry.
No worries.
Thanks, brain. I was a massage therapist for 10 years, and then the pandemic hit, and I lost it. And I was also doing live audio engineering. I have my own festival set up where I was going to start throwing my own festivals.
Yeah.
I invested in that a month before the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And then I was fortunate enough in California to be given, you know, to be helped with unemployment to some degree, which helps keeps the lights on, and it gets me food basically.
Yeah.
My friends told me that I should turn to streaming because I like making music, and they said like, well, you also talk at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you're I feel like I'm easy to talk to. I hope I'm easy to talk to.
You are. I find you
And
so.
so, thanks. And so when people are generous to what we're doing, I do tell people now, it's like I'm still learning to comfortably say, yes, I would love this to be a career. I am learning to diversify what I do so that I don't have to rely on it, so it doesn't become a stressor, because I don't have the expectation of anyone. And that's a big thing. I do not expect people to do things.
You can't expect people to do anything.
Exactly.
Right? You can't even expect people to show up to watch. You can hope.
Yeah.
You can, you know, you can have, you get to a point where you know there are certain people who will likely show up, but you can't expect that they will.
Well, then you start not enjoying what you do, right? Because you set false expectations that you cannot manage. You can consistently...
Holy shit!
Oh, Sage!
Sage Hinato coming in with a party of 21. Welcome in, Raiders. Welcome aboard the airship Phantoma. We finally have a name for the airship. The RPG village is invading. Welcome in, everybody. You are, of course, hitting us at the Chillydown. I'm being joined by the Reluctant Hermit, who is absolutely lovely, and we're discussing everything you can imagine. At the moment, we're talking about accepting money on Twitch.
I am Optimus
Which is
Prime,
a challenging thing.
and I send this message to any surviving Autobots taking refuge among the stars.
So, Sage, this is actually
We are here.
Rated in.
We
It's good to see
are
you,
waiting.
my friend. Sage and I are both pursuing streaming as potential careers.
I
And
am
again, yeah, like
So.
it's the thing. Heck, high five.
Thank you, Dizzy.
We need the thing. Bap.
Thank you for the follow, Dizzy.
So if you're pursuing streaming as a potential career, there are things that you have to work with.
Yes.
One of which, like we said, is not leading with any expectation that anyone is going to show up. Right? The expectations that you can have
I
are
am
of
Optimus
yourself.
Prime, and I
Right.
send this message to any
Like,
surviving
try and show up.
Autobots taking refuge
Be good,
among
like,
the
be in integrity
stars.
with yourself. Hopefully, as best
We
you can.
are here.
Right?
We are waiting.
And I think one of the things that we were also talking about that's hard is I never want to respond to any support inauthentically. Right? It's why there are moments where I feel like if people are being particularly generous and someone starts writing in chat, let's break him, Unfortunately, friends, I guarantee you, most streamers, one of two things is going to happen. They are not going to, or they are going to, and it's going to be false.
Yeah.
And that's for each person to sort out, because in my mind, I want to create a space that shows integrity, right? And so I'm not going to start crying because you're telling me that I should.
Yeah.
I'm going to respond as I can, when I can, authentically as I can, because you deserve that honesty.
Yes.
As someone that is part of a community or an audience member or someone that lurks, you deserve that honesty, right? Because at the end of the day, if you start faking tears, you have to go to bed with that at night.
Yep. And you do it once. If you start to imitate feelings rather than actually having those feelings, it will become easier and part of your normal habit of reaction if you do it sustainably. And eventually, that path leads to ruin.
Yeah, because it's like you cannot make. I've witnessed it. Like by watching. I used to watch a lot of artists. That there would be a burnout moment.
Yeah.
You know. I mean, most famously, you have someone like Britney Spears, who was very, 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 very successful, and then she shaved her head, and everyone went, "What's going on?" It's like, because she could not maintain the lie that everything was all right in her life. You know. And so learning to be in a space of authentic gratitude and honesty with your friends, your community in general, is really, really, really important.
Absolutely, Danny. Absolutely.
Yeah, Majin, like that's a big thing, right? Like, if you do it once and you get caught, also your integrity's shattered. You can't take that back.
And Sage, I know I appreciate the raid very much, and I'm glad you were able to come in. We're just kind of, going with the conversation. So I saw it's one of those things where I want to respond, but I don't want to do it in chat. But at the same time, I don't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation too much. So I'm like,
I'll never be bothered,
bouncing on those.
Angelus. I understand that completely.
Well,
I'm also reading it.
Well, the thing with me is I don't want to derail my own thought at that moment. I have to hold the thought in, or we'll have another moment where I'll stare blankly at you and be like, because my brain will just go, pop. Nucleic, hello, beautiful.
Good to see you, brother. How are you doing, my friend?
But yes, well, like Danny said, once people start seeing that you're not being genuine in your reactions, they'll know. And Twitch viewers are very, very good often at seeing when you're being genuine and when you're not.
Yeah.
They can tell. Especially if they've watched you enough times. And yes, I will get distracted by shiny objects. And
what is it? Attention deficit shiny? ADOS
Squirrel
is what my friend. Yeah, squirrel. Squirrel.
Harry Hobbit hookers. What?
Yeah. Oh my God. I still that's I'm gonna have to. That's gonna be a treasured moment in my mind. But it's interesting how, like, to me, the platform of Twitch really is a human experience. When you pull away all of the things that are there, at the end of the day, it's experiencing human connection.
Yes.
Or witnessing human behavior. And so
and
when
it's a giant buskers festival.
It's a giant what?
It's a giant buskers festival. We're all out working a digital side street, busking with our hat out, performing to get coins.
And learning that that's okay, and being humble enough to know that's okay, is like a good path to making sure that you stay in good integrity.
Yes.
It's why there are certain things like my mentor asked me, what are you willing to compromise on? I want to do more for my community, but I also want to do it intelligently and sustainably.
Yes.
It's why that I know in my particular, like, I have some dreams of things that I want to do, that may have to come later on. It's why, like, I've seen a lot of people that like do a lot of giveaways, and I'm stoked for them because I assume that they're capable of doing that. My fear sometimes is someone coming and be like, well, if you get bits and subs, why aren't you giving away, like, certain things? And it's like, because I literally have to feed myself.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm humble enough to say that at the end of the day. And that's hard to do because my whole life has been structured around I have a job, I have an apartment, I do these things. And now as a Twitch streamer, you have to recognize that who you are integrally is valuable, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Just don't create an ego around it. Do not respond to things in order to try and finagle more, because at the end of the day, what that'll end up doing is it'll bite you in the butt.
Yep. You always have to be grateful, and you always have to be humble. And I was actually asked the same thing about giveaways. And my answer is quite simply, any money I've made on Twitch has always gone back into the stream so that I can work towards providing the best level of content that I'm able to provide. That's why this new microphone that I have here, this was paid for by the money I've received on Twitch. Right? The chair I'm sitting on, the new desk I have, all of these things were solely paid for by the money I've made on Twitch.
Love you, Majid.
Thank you for the gifted sub, Danny. So, that's like right now where I'm lucky enough to have a day job that I have. I can do that with the money that I make on Twitch. It goes right back into development for the stream, whether it's buying equipment or buying games. No worries, Danny. We left the alerts on for a reason. Because we both enjoy them.
Because they're good.
They are good. I'm not going to lie. That's pretty sexy.
I love that. I turned it on and I was like, ooh, it's good jazz. Yes.
So, but if my situation was where I wasn't working, then absolutely my money would go towards that because I work, and there are times where I had a payout. I used that money and spent it on my kid because I could, right? Because we took a mental health day for the whole family. Because if anyone's being impacted by this lockdown and this virus, it's kids.
Children at this is a good thing to talk about, because I'm thinking of the longevity of any sort of thing that we value, right? And right now, this pandemic is actually severely interrupting socialization of children.
Yes.
And I've thought about this when I drive down the road to the grocery store, and I see someone that's 5 years old, and it's a little kid that's wearing a mask, and I'm just kind of like, I was born in 1990. That was something I didn't hear about, and then it was only when I was into my late 20s that I started seeing like more footage from like Tokyo or China, and I'm like, people are wearing masks for, and I was like, oh, they're protecting people from germs. They're being considerate. And it's very interesting to see how this is going to impact things. And I would say that there are silver linings to this time period, but overall, in general, it's very hard to see the end of the tunnel at the moment. It's very hard to kind of pick out the pinpoints of light that you can. And that's why I think it's important, like you said, to find people to relate to that lift you up. And again, finding people with good integrity that lift you up.
Yeah.
And learning to discern that is challenging.
Yes.
In general.
And you're absolutely right, Afro. Like, we're going to have an entire generation of kids from, young adults, 20, to kids who are being born, who are going to be impacted by this moment in history in a way that all of us born before that grew up and had our formative years in the 90s, the 2000s, or the 80s, never had to experience something this disruptive to our lives. Even in the 80s when I still remember the tail end of the Cold War when we would hear about, we still had those things about nuclear worries about getting under our desks. That was still somewhat of a thing. Even that wasn't as impactful as this entire generation with masks and everything else. All right, Sage, I feel like I'm constantly learning throughout the year that I've been on Twitch. Most people know how I am with the recent things that happened to me. When I got terminated from my job 2 weeks ago, I decided to open up a bit on Twitter. I decided then to push Twitch career, but my biggest thing that I've learned is And this goes to anyone who wants to stream it. Be you and always be grateful to everyone. Absolutely.
Absolutely, Sage.
It's interesting you say that. My 5-year-old got a stomach bug the other day and came out with a mask. He said, on so I don't get you sick. As someone who regularly has people yell at me in my job for asking them to wear a mask, protect me, it broke my heart. I absolutely understand. Like, my youngest, who is 9, has very much become... She might be asleep. Hold on.
No worries.
She's awake and she's listening, but she's become very much a housebody because she doesn't want to go anywhere because she has concerns about the virus. And like Nova Scotia has a very small case count. We've been very lucky, but that's also because we have under 1 million people living in the entire province. But that concern is there for kids. They are growing up with this thing that there's this virus out there that's killing older people, and, you know, anybody over the age of 20 is terribly old to them. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. No, it's. I have a couple friends that are nurses, and
Yeah, Muffin is a CCA. She works at. She's a continuing care assistant. So she works at the veterans unit at a local hospital.
So you get firsthand accounts then of how this is really
Yes.
impacting people.
Yes.
You know, and that's.
And she also has her vaccine,
Yeah.
which is very fortunate for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a nucleic nurse. This is
Yes.
actually like, I love you, nucleic, and like again, you want to talk about Don't mean to cycle back to certain things, but finding people in your community to relate to.
Mhm.
Anytime I've spoken with you, Hark, and also more recently Nucleic Nurse. I think Nucleic Nurse, you've been there a couple times when I've gone into tears about being vulnerable around how this is impacting my mental state. I really love more than ever now what Twitch can be.
Mhm.
But again, like, it's also gotten to me a little bit, and to have friends that kind of go, oh, we had no, like, you know, like, we got you. And it's just like, you have no idea how much that means.
Yeah.
You know, to have people in your life. And it's kind of like, that is one of the silver lining gifts of the pandemic, is learning that, like, people are people.
Mhm.
You know, and that there you can find loving people in your life to be present, but also at the same time, I have zero expectation that, like, they're going to be there every day. And it's those moments that I take as a tool to remind myself that the next time I show up doing anything, that I can do this.
Mhm.
I can do this. I can do this in good integrity. And I think that's also another thing in terms of, like, you know, with the pandemic for kids, it's like there's an opportunity here to also, like, really train some very good behaviors, you know, in general. And depending, you know, like, it's something where it's like you were talking about, like, teaching emotional language, Angelus. Like, you have this golden opportunity now where, like, you are with your kids probably a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I don't want to make the assumption, but, like, a little bit more. And
Mhm.
so,
Yeah, last
you
year,
have this, yeah.
March break came, because we have March break in March. Obviously, that's our spring break. It got extended by a week. And then school got closed until September. So I had a very long summer. I love my kids to pieces. But a 6-month March break was not fun.
Well, it's like, I find it funny, to me, it's relative suffering, right? Like, the other day I was in this crisis moment where I realized that I could not be everywhere all at once when I have friends that I want to take care of.
Mhm.
And then I thought about parents, and I suddenly kind of went into this thing where it's like, I should shut up. You know, because as a parent, like, you are constantly there, and that's why, to me, parents really are superheroes. But it also I drew strength from that, where it's like, well, maybe what I need to do is talk to a parent and say, like, hey, how do you manage this in a healthy manner? And it's different for everybody, but
Well, I can answer
you
that
know,
for you.
yeah, I'm curious, Angela, like, because it's similar, like, you know, trying to be there for friends constantly, but, like, having a responsibility
Yes.
to be there for somebody
Uh,
gives you a certain kind of strength.
early on in July, I stood in the kitchen and had a full breakdown of tears because I just absolutely lost it worrying about what my children and other children are facing with this pandemic and the uncertainty of it all. Because this was very early on, right? We had lockdown was still kind of fresh. There were vaccines being worked on, but it wasn't even in the testing phase yet. So, and all you heard day after day were rising case counts around the world, rising death counts around the world. You know, I had friends of friends who were dying. I had friends who were sick who almost died from this virus. And some of these people were in their 20s or younger. And I just wept with the enormity of stress I felt thinking about this entire generation going through this moment. Because we think about how scary it is for us as adults. It's mind-boggling, terrifying for kids, especially where they can't interact with their friends like they did. Right? They're in school now, but it's by cohort classes. They only interact with those kids in their class.
Mm-hmm.
And just the weight of all of that hit me, and I just broke down and wept in the kitchen because there was nothing I could do.
Mm-hmm.
Except, and the only thing that I have been able to do is I've been honest with the kid, explaining to them exactly what's happening, why we're wearing masks, and, you know, putting it in proper context and giving them what information that I could so that they knew what was happening. Because the scariest thing for a child is not knowing what's happening and having adults tell you things are happening, but you don't need to worry about it. Not telling them things is scarier than actually telling them the things.
Yeah. I mean that's why I wish a lot more people would be a bit more honest in general as well. It's why like Nucleic, like you said, I fully believe you want to talk about compliments. That's hard for me to integrate even just reading it, that someone would be willing to talk, you know.
Yeah.
But I also know you now a lot more, Nucleic, and I trust that. Dang it, ADD brain, you had a thought and then it went away. Honesty and transparency, being able to honestly come forward and say I'm struggling, but also having the state of mind to also recognize that I can be honest with how I'm feeling, but I don't have to be transparent with every single detail because I'm still processing it. And if I verbally process everything in front of everybody, that can become very confusing. So that's why sometimes, like you said, stepping back or creating a context with like someone that you need to communicate with, where you step back and go, okay, what do I need to actually communicate? Take a deep breath in, remove yourself, then come back and share that. That's why, like, you know, more recently I was talking to a mentor of mine about that in terms of like what's the difference between honesty and transparency. So it's that last little inch where you do all of the hamster wheeling.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to show the hamster wheel.
No.
You know, and it actually doesn't behoove anyone either. Like with children, if they watch you go through that cycle, they're gonna be like, everything's falling apart. It's like to have a little bit of certainty that there is some sort of place where it's like it's okay to be uncertain, but that can also be a rock that you go to. Is super, super, super important. And like, yeah, exactly, Nucleic. That sort of thing. That's the self-care.
And Paige, I have one thing I will say about that, because it's true for a lot of us. I've noticed a lot of streamers all have that same thing where, especially in the last year, I've made some very good friendship with people I would probably have never met had it not been for Twitch. And also the thing with people offline, like I've always had in my offline, except for when I was a kid, but once I hit later high school and then into adulthood, I had one or two friends. I use that term loosely. It's because the trajectory of my path through game industry and other things like that, none of the people I grew up with could relate or had any idea what I was talking about. But the biggest thing, and this is especially true for streamers and content creators, it's a TikTok that I heard that I share with people often, is that you're more likely to get support from people you've never met or strangers on the internet than from people who've known you your whole life, because the people who have known you since you were a kid still think of you as that kid. Where people you are meeting now don't have all that old data to deal with. They're accepting you for who you are now, not who you were.
Mm-hmm.
So your
It's a
friendships
sobering
are like
thought.
that. You know, it's like when I talk to, occasionally I'll bump into people I know and they'll ask, you know, what are you doing? Or they'll message me on Facebook and they'll be like, oh, I saw you're streaming. Have you made $1 million yet? And I'm like, I wish.
Yeah.
But, you know, they will always see you as that kid they knew in elementary school, or that kid they knew in high school, or that guy who got drunk at a work party 10, 20 years ago. Their memory of you and their reality projection of who you are is based on what they knew, not who you are now. The only people who know who you are now are people who are in the moment with you. Everything else is somebody you used to be 5 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm. It's an empowering thought as well, because you can, by having an interact. This is why I think like first impressions can be very, very important, but they can also be very important for you, right? Because if someone remembers you a certain way, and you get feedback that way, it's like, well, you can either have you can have imposter syndrome around it, or you can realize maybe I can grow into that.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that you sent me recently was a TikTok about someone saying sometimes you are the person that needs to show up in your life.
Yes. You're the person you are the person now who you needed then.
Yeah, and it's well, I mean, there are various words that you can use to describe that. I've had friends that's called shadow work, where it's like essentially you now relates to you then. It's something that I did with a mentor of mine, and can be very, very, very powerful. But sometimes it also can just be simple as you showing up to stream and someone coming in and saying something nice, and suddenly you realize, wow, I've imagined myself being a jerk my whole life. And then someone comes in and they put a paragraph in chat saying, I've been really struggling recently. Thank you so very much. And suddenly you realize that is who I can be.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful thing, you know, and it's the gift of recognizing what human companionship can be, but also giving yourself permission to constantly grow.
Yes.
You know?
And there's nothing wrong with having a goal to grow into.
Yeah, that's you want to like you're pulling at the thread, Angelus, that I've been struggling with the last couple weeks, you know, and it's something that I'm still not comfortable with, but I'm learning to be grateful for, and I realize that like a couple without directly addressing it, a couple golden thoughts that were given to me. The destination is, to me, I don't like using that word destination. It's a journey. What matters is the people that you take it with, the experience you have with it, and the longevity of what it can be until you're done with what it is, which is like, I'm done streaming. Thank you so very much. Good night. Right? To me, this is the long... Twitch streaming is the long show.
Yes.
Of your life.
Yes.
Right?
Twitch is a marathon.
Twitch is a marathon. And I think, I mean, a friend of mine called it, there's certain things called, once you make affiliate, right? There is something called the affiliate hangover. You got there.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you can start making a stream of income. You feel very, very empowered. There's this beautiful thing, and that's fantastic. And I love you, Nucleic. Yeah, and you're also Nucleic. Actually, has been there for me. Speaking of, you got me through a dark year and a half. Nucleic, you came in when I was in this weird low, and you reminded me that it's okay. It's like Twitch is learning to ride a wave, or it's like being on a coastline. You're riding certain waves sometimes, you know. Yeah. And this is why we were talking earlier. Like when people make partners, suddenly it's like either something changes and they're no longer relating to people the same way, or they've like, like, oh, I can relax now, it's whatever. And it's like, no, like if that's your attitude, then you weren't really trying to create something with the integrity of it being something beautiful.
Yeah.
Love you too, Dizzy.
Too many people elevate partnership to a level where it's a main goal when it's really just another milestone. But they see it as an end result, not the next phase.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much emphasis put upon it. Like, yes, you get better profit from it. Yes, you get better discoverability from it, whatever. But once you achieve it, what you do with it is what matters.
And I've put a lot of thought in that, and I know that, like, funnily enough, I just want to read what Sage is writing. In many ways, if you don't mind me reading,
go for it.
What he says.
Go ahead.
Sage is saying, in many ways, I feel like the last year was finding myself when I was just learning everything. Now I look back and I feel pride because I know the me in the past needed the me I am now. Twitch is a journey. Followers are not followers; they are friends. In my case, villagers, because they are home. I feel like I've come far. Since my early 2020 streams, if someone comes in and chills me, I feel honored just to have the exactly Sage.
Mm-hmm.
And Nucleic saying riding those highs when they're there, and lean on the community, let them love you in those lows. And and it's an important thing. Like you said, we elevate this concept. And it's funny is that I don't actually really understand what sources of input are with this. It's kind of like a feeling that we all kind of like talk about, with partnership. The thing that came to mind when there was a moment, Angelus, that really shook me. It's when someone put a hashtag in my chat, and like, I've really, really, really loved doing this and pursuing this, and I've been comfortable with where I am, and it's because my father told me, don't go take that job in a factory making guitar pickups, even if it's related to music. And I said, why? It's like, because every time you come back in from streaming that evening, you have a smile on your face. And you look lighter and happier.
Yeah.
And it's not because like you're rejoicing in like some selfish thing. It's because you experienced something beautiful with someone. Because that's what I go in to tell my fiance at the end of the evening, is this beautiful thing happened.
Yep.
And so in my mind, when people like when someone put in hashtag Hermit for partner in chat, I got really bound up because I didn't really know what that meant. And I was thinking of all of the things that I'd heard about in association with partnership, and all of the stress and all of the drama that I heard, and it paralyzed me. And it's still like, I'm still like, tomorrow, friends, I'm returning, and I'm still like looking at this going like, okay, like, and I'm processing it. And by talking with my friends in various communities, with people that are on that journey as well, I realized that it's a milestone where I can think of it as the support is the same. The number may increase. You matter just as much.
Yes.
Partnership, in essence, if you strip it away, it just becomes a more sustainable way of you still doing the thing that you love.
Yes. It provides greater opportunity.
Yeah, if you deify it, suddenly I think that's like that scare. That's the fear for myself. That's that fear of success. In my mind, after having the support and like the loving conversations with people, and like even, or like the way that I changed it in my mind is that I was gifted a free emote from somebody, and so instead of being afraid of that thing that freaked me out, I decided, like, I'm going to turn this into a source of strength and joy. That in my mind, I have an emote for it now. Because now when I look at it, instead of associating something negative, I associate it as like, okay, this is what this means to me. And the thing that I've created in my mind is that if I become a partner, I want to help people. That's it. That it's the core of what I do each evening. I'm not a brilliant Call of Duty player. Like, I mean, I'm my friend calls I'm a distractible dingus.
Yes.
That at the end of the day, I want you to feel like you have a place to go to that is safe, joyful, and that I also bring my friends to people that I think have similar values. So in my mind, this journey that I'm taking for partner, right, is that I would rather I want to lift people up as much as I can on that journey, And once that milestone crosses, it's going to stay the same. I'm going to keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I just will have more resources available to me, which means that I get to rejoice in that, as opposed to going, oh, I can relax now that I... No.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
No.
I want to facilitate helping people, because at the end of the day, I think that we all need that a little bit more, you know, and that's why I love associating with the friends that I have, because they have very similar values. It's why I like it, you know. I also don't talk to as many people like as I'd like to, but there are certain people where I meet them and I connect with them. I'm just like, I would love to talk with you more. It's why I was comfortable coming on to your podcast, Angelus, because every time I've interacted with you, it's been joyful, it's been interesting, and I've known you for a long time as well.
Yeah.
You know?
It's been a minute, certainly.
Yeah.
But
In Twitch years, it's been
Yeah.
about 10 years.
yeah, something
you know?
like that. You know, 5 minutes in pandemic time. 20 years have passed. But yeah, well, see, that's the thing. Like, you see it all the time with people. They hit partner, and not necessarily they change, but they stop. They stop trying. They relax. They're like, okay, I made it. They get lazy. And if you want to make, like, I always say this, you want to make this sustainable and profitable, you have to stay hungry. Right? You have to keep doing the work, and you have to keep showing up. Right? Especially when, especially people who, the genuine people who build their communities around positivity, those people generally stay good. Right? They stay consistent, and usually they do go the distance. Those people who build their communities around positivity in a disingenuous way, once they reach whatever point they want to reach, then they stop doing the things they're doing. They have to remember they have this entire community that they brought with them, who have been supporting them along this journey, that all of a sudden you're no longer turning up to do the things with them. You're going to end up hurting all of these people because they've, grown with you, or they've traveled with you, and all of a sudden you're gone. It's one of those things. It's like nobody thinks about the impact that those actions have on a world because of the disconnect that they see with being online. When at this point in the simulation, our online connections have gained a new level of strength because we've been so separated from the outside world due to lockdowns and quarantine and the way life is going, that all our relationships online have taken on new meaning.
Which also means that you have to pay attention to how you relate to them a bit more, right? And that's why, yeah, exactly. Nucleic nurse, got to be uncomfortable with being I've got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's why one of my favorite interviews is with David Bowie, and someone asked him, it's like, I noticed that you do a lot of different genres. Why don't you just stick to what's popular? Why don't you just do it's like because it's boring, but also like the most magical things that happen are kind of like when you walk out into an ocean and your feet are just above the ground and your head's just above the water. That level of uncomfortability and kind of magnanimous, like nebulous space is where magic happens. Now the trick is not to get swept out to sea and not to get too comfortable. And that's a continuous process. For myself personally, I felt like I was getting swept out to sea, not because of anything that anyone in my community was doing, but because I was not being grounded with what I needed to be grounded with. I needed to go outside. I need to see my fiance more other than 10 minutes before bed. I need to go, I need to find a hobby that also is just for me, and that's okay. Yeah. There was a moment the other day where I was starting to think what else can I do? And I wanted to go for I went to a botanical garden, and my first thought was I should bring my camera with me to start doing this thing where I want to vlog. And I realized, no, I've thought about vlogging before, but now I'm trying to take it everywhere I go. Yeah. I need some space. Yeah. I need to go out and be in the sunshine. I need to just lay in the grass. You need some you time. I need some and what's ironic is that I'm terrible at it. But it's also why, like I said much earlier, I have commands in chat now where it's literally me going like, idiot, like you talk about this, do the thing. And that's that creativity and that hunger. It's like if I hadn't, come against the wall at some point where I realized like I'm not, this is not serving me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought maybe I need to be in the right headspace to talk about this. And I literally need a version of myself to tell me, you need to do this. You need to wake up when you need to go to bed when you need to go to bed. You need to wake up when you need to wake up. You need to drink more water. You need to eat a little bit better. And again, friends, this is not easy. None of it's easy. But when it comes to like a marathon, you don't train for 3 months and then expect that you can keep doing it for the rest of your life. And it's why like I think the other thing that like in terms of like what you do want, like the way that I want to articulate when people are like, well, if anyone ever asks me like, well, what do you do with your Twitch payout? It's like, I literally pay for voice lessons so I can get better at singing. I see a voice teacher once a week, $40 an hour because of the exchange rate. Fortunately, thank you, Australia, whatever. And it literally is anytime. And if people are like, well, you make sound alerts, it's like I literally take the money that I make from sound alerts and I put it towards getting better at singing and composing. Why? Because I feel like I owe it to myself to get better. And also, if I can create the best content that I can, wouldn't it be lovely if in a year's time someone could come to me with a ridiculous idea for something and I'd be like, yeah, I can do that. Why? Because I reinvested all of the love and compassion that you all gave me in order to serving what I believe in more. And that's what gratitude is. It's like by being grateful, it's like turning around and thank you. Let me improve myself so that we can have something even more beautiful happen. That was a loud firework. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Did you hear that?
I did actually. And yet, Sage, your mom was right. Nothing worth doing is ever easy. That's absolutely true. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes determination. And, sometimes even that's not enough. You just have to try. But nothing gets started if you don't try to start something. And here's the final thing that I think encapsulates a lot of what we've been talking about tonight, is that, especially on Twitch and content creation, you're not in competition with anyone except yourself. That's something that I struggled with not that long ago, seeing, because there's a group of us who all started around the same time, and people are growing at different rates. It's bound to happen, for different reasons, because their content is catching the right kind of eyes at this moment. They've hit their moment, or they're still, trying to find their thing. We're all growing at different rates, and that's natural. And I had a point, and this was my imposter syndrome, where I was hitting a certain regular level of average. And it kind of was static for a while. And that's when I started wondering, I would question, are these my friends who are just trying to, be supportive? Am I, not growing because I'm actually boring and nobody wants to tell me that? And I had all these moments of self-doubt where I thought, maybe this is where I'm going to peak. And that's it. And I had to step back, disconnect from things for a couple of days, sit myself down and remind myself that I'm not competing with anyone. And, there are millions of people every day who are watching Twitch, and I will find those people either, in spurts progressively, one day at a time, or however long it takes. It's not a rush. I'm not in a hurry. I'm not relying on this to survive or anything. It's not, a thing. I enjoy doing it. I'm having fun. I'm growing. I'm meeting new people, and it's great. I have to stop worrying about what other people are doing and just focus on doing the best content that I can do. And it will grow as it grows. But
it's also good for your friendships.
Yes, absolutely.
I have two friends who are very, very successful in my eyes, and like there have been days where I kind of like you said, like you're only in competition with yourself because the moment that you go into fear, around not being as successful as someone else is the moment that you've lost touch with who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and also from a friend's perspective, it's like I wish them all the love and like from a very, very like good integral standpoint. I realized that the growing fear inside had nothing to do with them and
Yeah.
had everything to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of projecting that in any capacity, I decided like there was a couple days where I just literally decided to like turn everything off and go, I need to sort this out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought, you know, what was it? When I was 24, I had a mentor that like really kind of threw it in my face that like I had jealous habits.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I'd been over that. Suddenly I get on a Twitch and suddenly my brain's been like, hey, guess what? You didn't deal with this facet of this problem. You know why? Because you never experienced it before.
Mm-hmm.
The same tool of self-reflection helped me realize that the only person I have to compete with is myself.
Yeah.
That also means that you need to do, like, as an athlete, you need to take good care of yourself. Training for a thing is also learning to do it well. Part of doing things well is taking a step away from the thing that you're doing and enjoying something. I realized the other day that, like, I came to an evening where I didn't have much on my mind but, like, two things.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, wow, I haven't been watching any of the shows that I like.
Mm-hmm.
I have nothing to talk about.
Yep.
You know? And that's that fear of being boring. So again, you're only, like you said, like Angelus, you put it very succinctly, you're only in competition with yourself.
Yes.
You know.
And well, like the other thing is that with Twitch, people get too caught up in existing viewers, right? Because we all like a lot of us all share some of the same people because we go through one of my initial mistakes with Twitch, which is completely because of my personality, was I was waiting until all my friends weren't streaming before I'd stream. Or if I did stream, I didn't say anything about it. I just went live and quietly streamed, didn't announce it or anything. I might tweet, and that's about it. Because I didn't want to take up oxygen from their stream. And I had to realize that what I'm doing probably has nothing to do with what they're doing. We're doing different things because we're playing different games for different people. And there's lots of viewers out there. So I'm not in competition with them. So I need to stream when it's good for me. When the time works for me. And there's enough people to go around. But I was self-sabotaging myself by not streaming when my friends were on so I could be in their stream supporting them. And I had to stop doing that because that was not helping me and my mental health because I was always anxious about going on and interrupting my friend.
It's like the point that you brought up about figuring out what's good for you. I used to stream 6 days a week. I had Wednesday off.
Yes, Danny, you did.
I love you, Majin. Majin's good people.
Absolutely.
And there was a moment where I realized that it didn't serve me, and then I tried kind of like doing like a sort of off-kilter thing, and I realized with certain things that I wanted to do in terms of music, in terms of relating to my family, and also in terms of like supporting my friends, also, I had to find something that worked for me, and I discovered those were the days that were not peak days on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like unfortunately to some degree, I wish that like I could be like Dr. Manhattan and be everywhere at once. Friday and Saturday nights are fantastic nights for discoverability, and everyone's like, it's the weekend. It's also the time where my fiance has the night off.
Yeah.
Or where my friends who I play music with, and I say this so everyone knows, I do it safely in pretty much almost an auditorium-sized space with windows open,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm the vocalist with a 30-foot long cable away from them.
Yeah.
And they're all spread out. I don't know why I feel like I need to clarify that, but I want to model good behavior, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
And I needed time to do that too.
Yes.
Because if I don't do that, and I do one thing consistently, suddenly my mind is not being as expensive as it could be. I'm not engaging with things that I love,
Mm-hmm.
and I start to lose the things that are important in my life, which is connection to the people,
Yes.
to people that I can literally see in front of me, and doing something that was also kind of like the kernel of why I got into Twitch streaming, which was sharing music and content.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I have a very, I would probably say, odd schedule to most people. Like, you do things Sunday through Wednesday. That's, I was like, because it works for me, and
Yes.
because if I don't do that, and I try and orient everything around what it is,
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, I'll probably have a period where I break down every once in a while, where I have a week
Yep.
where I don't stream at all, because why? I'm in tatters over myself.
Yes. You're exhausted. You've
You know.
lost your equilibrium, and you crash. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I don't have a schedule. Because
Yeah, and exactly. This is why, like, it works for you to not.
Yes.
Right? You just do the thing that when you can do it.
yeah, like I'll do this podcast on Saturday generally. I've thought
Mhm.
about moving it around, but so far Saturdays seem to work. Now I usually do it at a certain time, but I don't have to. I have that flexibility. That said, the rest of the week, I could go on, or I could not, depending on where my headspace is. So if I'm in the mood to stream, I'm gonna stream, unless life happens, because life can happen. But that works for me because I need to be in a particular mood, in a particular headspace, and have enough spoons to do the stream.
I love that meta. You use that metaphor too.
Yes.
Having spoons, friends, like having spell slots. Like if you run out of
Mhm.
spell slots or spoons, it's just kind of like all you got left is knives
Yep.
or or forks, and it comes out with a different word instead. instead.
See, I understand that, Danny, because the rest of my life, I need a routine. I have a very specific routine for certain things because of my ADHD. But I leave a block of time from usually around 3 o'clock in the afternoon till around 9 o'clock in the evening that I'm more of a free-range chicken because I need to burst off that extra energy that I saved by being regimented earlier on. Otherwise, I don't sleep. Which is why
Oh,
I
man.
usually stream in that block of time, because that's a major energy expenditure that allows me to go to bed. But I can't set a time and go, I'm going to stream at bleh, because I'll either get incredibly anxious before I go live, knowing, oh my God, I have to do the thing. Can I do the thing? What am I going to do? Or
Mhm.
I will go, well, I know I scheduled it, but do I really have to? Can I do it tomorrow? I am a very good procrastinator. Like, I could teach a master class on how to do things tomorrow. And that's not good. So if I don't have a schedule, I'm more motivated to do the thing than if I do. Because I'll be like, I'm ready. I'll go live. I'll do the thing. It's good. Get the energy out. I go to bed. That works. Yeah, angry music just makes me hungry. But yeah, see, I get it, Nucleic. Exactly it. I can do improv all day, but routine, regimented performance is not my thing. I did that for 12 years in gymnastics. Never again.
It's different for each person. That's the other
Yes.
thing, that like any advice that you hear online, take it with a grain of salt. Try and see if you integrate it and it doesn't work for you. Know that there's nothing wrong with you. It's just not your way.
Mhm.
Right? Right. Exactly, Sage. Like if it works for you, it works for you, my dude.
Yeah.
It's like
Exactly.
You
Like
have me
I'm
time.
not anti-schedule. I am anti-schedule for me. There are people who need it and people who thrive with a schedule. People can be very successful with a schedule, and a lot of people say that you need to have that schedule to grow on Twitch, which I guess because it provides consistency, but fuck consistency. I'd rather have my mental health.
It's true. What's
that's
funny
me.
is that like yeah, and what's funny is that even like there's a kernel of like of truth there from hearing you as well, is that I also because I like having structure, Angelus. I really do. And one of the hardest things about this year is not having structure.
Yeah.
And having it all on me. The reason why I created a schedule for myself was to create some structure. And now what I'm realizing is that there is a day where I just can't, or if I'm not really there, I will notice 3 or 4 hours beforehand. And the best thing that I can do, I go to every social platform that I'm on and I say, this is what's going on with me today. I love you all. I will return when I am feeling better and more present. And then I will go do something that allows me to get back to center. I'm still discovering that, friends. A little bit. I have music. One of the things that I want to do is blacksmithing and leatherworking. But I also realize that I need to facilitate that in a certain way. That's a whole other conversation.
Good night, Sir Frog. Love you. We'll catch you.
It is getting
around
on,
the things.
Captain.
It is. We've been having a very good conversation and just relax. But, you know, that's the thing. Like, that's one of the things I had to learn was that it's okay to not do the thing. You have to be comfortable to say, I cannot do it today. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. You know, that was a burden I had during December and January when I wasn't streaming. I felt incredibly guilty about taking that time off because people had subscribed to the channel and I felt like I was disappointing. But then I realized, well, if I'm not in the space to do a stream, to put on a show, I'm not doing them any kind of good trying to pretend like I can do it. I'm better off not streaming. Exactly. I'm not, if I'm not my best self and able to do a proper stream that I want to do and, you know, be myself, be my best self and be my authentic self and not just some puddle of goo that's mumbling through a stream, then I'm better off not going live. And, you know, that was the hardest thing to learn out of anything, is that it's okay to not go live when you're not in space.
Yeah, exactly, Majin. That's like it's like I think it's cyclical sometimes as well, because sometimes we have to be reminded. You know, I felt very, very fortunate in the last couple of days that, like, because I value self-care and integrity, I've met so many lovely friends that remind me when I'm not being in integrity with those values. And that's like, Hermit, you look tired. Go to bed.
Yep.
You know, or showing up, and if someone really just says, like, we hear that you're saying that you're fine, but it really seems that you're not. And I'll actually stop the game. I'll put it on pause. And I'll just talk about what I'm feeling. And if someone's like, well, I wanted to watch the game, it's like, well, you know, I love you regardless. There's probably at least 30 to 60 to 80 other streamers doing the same game right now.
And yes,
but I know what I need to do.
Exactly, Sage. Your community will know and understand and respect you more for being taking care of yourself than not taking care of you. Because if you're not doing the things you need to do to keep that proper balance, they'll yell at you. I know my friends will yell at me. They yell at me. I have been told off more times than I can count by Danny or by Samurai. They have both made very big points, and Munir did too, about telling me off if I was doing the thing I wasn't supposed to be doing. Because I will get myself in a position where I think, oh my god, I have to go live today because I said I would. I tweeted about it 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, yesterday. All this, they expect me to go on, I have to go on. I don't want to, but I'm going to do it. I've been told off for it. If you don't feel it, don't do it. I've learned.
It's funny is that I think the things that I've learned also is that like I would spend an hour or two after stream sometimes trying to do like certain things, and I realized that like, wait a second, I'm exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
I should go to bed. Some of the things that I like doing is that I like reaching out to people and saying thank you at the end of the evening. And I realized that I was doing that for, like, because I was writing for like, an hour and a half to various people. And I realized, you know what I could do? I could go to bed and I could wake up the next day and I could write something more meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
Doing things in the time that are best for you, friends, is important. If you're not feeling the thing, do your best to let people know. There was a Monday stream after a 12-hour where I literally showed up and my chest was aching from the amount of talking I'd done the day before, and I hadn't slept well. And I was literally in a place of almost like fight or flight, and I was really stressed out. And it was an opportunity where about, I think it was like 30 minutes in, I just full on addressed it. And it's like, friends, I'm not okay right now.
Yeah.
Trust your community.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
Hey.
Vulnerability can be a strength. I would say to a degree. To a degree.
Yes.
There's a time and a place. Because if the only thing that happens when you show up is that you're a blithering mess, then realistically speaking, then you really need to reassess what's going on.
Yeah.
Take a big step back and really reanalyze what you're doing. So it's good to have emotional releases. But if that's the only thing you do, maybe you need to readjust what you're doing.
Yeah. There's a difference between being vulnerable and standing out on top of a hill with your pants down around your ankles and your ass flapping in the breeze. You have
that's a big difference.
Context matters.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, I think we have hit almost the 4-hour mark. So much for the 2 hours.
It's been a lovely
on
conversation.
It absolutely has. We'll have to do it again.
I was actually going to ask you, could we do that? Because this has been really nice.
Anytime, anywhere. Thank you for the one. Hermit. Love you, my dude. Know that you are amazing. I'm heading out to wind down and get some food, then rest for the night.
Love you, Sage.
Absolutely, and thank you for the raid and hanging out and the conversation, Sage, as always. I actually have a raid target already in mind because it's Golden's birthday. So we're going to go say hello to Golden Diver for his birthday. And yeah, Hermit, when are you streaming next? Tomorrow?
I'll be live tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific. That's Central Mountain Standard Time, 8 Central and 9 Eastern. I'm thinking about returning either to some nostalgia. I've actually had some Elder Scrolls Skyrim on my mind a lot recently, and one of the things also, friends, if you're a variety streamer, do the thing that you love.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what's going on, like I've been playing Baldur's Gate, I love that to bits. There's a bit of this game where I'm just like, I'm gonna do this probably a little bit by myself, maybe, or when I want that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be live tomorrow, and I'll have some more announcements going forward then as well. Thank you so much, Angelus, for asking if like, again, friends, if you're from the shrubbery and you came in, please come and say hi to Angelus. They are this delightful every time you come and say hello. And if I just met you, I am a scheduled being. I'm on Sunday through Wednesday, unless there's something that comes up, in which case I do let everyone know in every place that I post as best I can to make sure that you all are informed as best you can be.
We're going to do the shout out thing now. Let's see if it actually works. It pulls up the clippy.
Aw, thank you. I'm not that hard.
Look at that.
You might do.
This is the perfect clip for this.
Oh no! No! Why?
Lol. That was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Oh man. That doesn't happen very much anymore, friends, because I realize that being in pain on stream is not something that's my forte.
So yes, I myself will be on probably tomorrow. I'm thinking to bring back Sunday Stardew, if if the mood hits me. So that might be a thing or something else, but it'll be on early in the afternoon, morning, depending on what happened. Otherwise, thank you everybody. Thank you, Hermit. It's been delightful. We're gonna go say hello to Golden. So bring your emotes, make some noise, wish him a happy birthday, and do all the dancey thing. Woohoo!